good? All right. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see some of your bright, smiling faces again in person. That's awesome. We'd like to welcome you to the City Council meeting of June 9th, 2020. All council members are in attendance, and I just wanted to let them know, especially those watching online, some of the precautions we're taking on the floor. Everyone's 6 feet apart. We didn't have that luxury up here on the dais with the council, and so we've got these dividers that are very temperamental. We're trying to be very careful not to touch them between each of us. Um, so that works out pretty well, hopefully. That's a good segue into our COVID-19 update. I'll just give you some quick numbers. Davis County has a 56.6 increase in cases. There are 83 cases now in Davis County, 2.6% positive of tests administered, which is good. We want to stay below 3%, and so far we're still below the 3%. South Weber City currently has 2 active cases. So we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Halverson, and then a prayer by Councilman Soderquist.
Please stand and repeat after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Father in heaven, we thank you very much for the opportunity to meet this evening with the City Council and city residents and other friends. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve and to live in this wonderful valley community. We're so grateful for the improvements that have taken place over the last few months relative to the COVID-19 issues. Pray that they may continue to improve and we might be able to be safe, especially our most vulnerable friends and family members. We pray for thy guidance this evening as we discuss the topics that are before us, that we may be able to understand each other, to be able to communicate and see the options that are before us and be able to make good decisions. We thank thee again for the blessings we enjoy and pray for these things now in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman Halverson and Soderquist. We will begin with public comment and ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Make sure you give your name and address. Please address the entire council and know that we won't be commenting during a public comment period. We're now open for public comment.
Mayor and City Council, is this on?
Thanks, get really close.
Yeah, you gotta be super close to the mic. My name is James Durant. I live at 7478 South, 1980 East, in what's called Cedar Cove. It's I've lived there since February 2002. Cedar Cove is in the homeowners association. They maintain the roads. They have some common areas. They have some walking trails that go around the edges of the neighborhood and actually join on to Cedar Cove Park. I manage homeowners associations as a side business, and I manage Cedar Cove, and I've been managing that for about 10 years. Anyways, today I'm here to, on behalf of the HOA board and each resident, to request that the city maintain all the sprinklers that are in the Cedar Cove Park. And I asked people with that map, and I emailed each of you. I don't know if you got that. You can
We did.
We got most of that there. But first, let me show you the boundaries of the park. So you can kind of see, I mean, it shows right there that kind of the edges, everything green there. And then if you were to pull up your master map, you can see pretty much the exact same boundary lines. Now, until about 4 years ago, the HOA assumed that it owned all the property up to what, it's that red line up on my picture. I could point over here, if it's okay, I'm gonna get it 6 feet. But the HOA was maintaining all the way up to about, you know, this whole area right here. Kind of goes down a hill, and there's a walking trail that goes through. We were maintaining up there. We thought we owned that property. So anyways, there was a concerned homeowner. He wanted to know where the property lines were, so we pulled up the plat map and we realized that that city property, and actually the county line or the property line the city owns, is where it kind of ends there at the green. So anyways, I contacted the city and they agreed to start to maintain, up to that area, mowing and trimming and so forth. Well, this spring, the sprinkler guy was slammed, so me and my boys started to help start up the HOA sprinklers. And in so doing, we found that 4 of the zones that hook up to the HOA timer box, which is right over there by Cambridge Crossing, you see that map I sent you, there's a star there, that it's controlled by that HOA sprinkler box. And I found that there were a number of broken sprinklers. And so I thought, well, I'll contact the city. So I did that. I called them up and I met a couple of guys from park maintenance crew out there. Showed them where the timer was, told them the zones that, had some problems with them. And I explained everything to them. Well, they called me back an hour later, said, you got to go over here and talk to us more. And I did. And they said, you got to call Mark Lawrence. So I called Mark Lawrence. We got back in town. I explained the situation to him. And he said that the sprinklers would need to be maintained by the HOA. Not a problem with that. I'm like, well, wait a second, Mark. These sprinklers are on city-owned property. And, if the city breaks a sprinkler by maintaining or mowing or aerating or fertilizing, or if the city resident is at the park and the sprinkler breaks, why should the HOA have to be responsible to replace these sprinklers? Well, he feels that since the timer block's on the HOA property, that the HOA is responsible. I shared with him some options on how we could work together to solve this issue, and he did not want to talk about it. He did not much. I told him I plan to bring it to the city council to decide, and that quickly ended our conversation. Now, I see a couple solutions I'd like to present. We can share the existing timer box. It's open. We can put a lock on it if you guys want. They know the zones. We could put even a little map there, and it could be really crystal clear. Number 2, if the city wants, they can install their own timer box right next to our box on the same pole. We can attach it. We can just take off those wires and hook it up to your own. And I shared those with Mark because he didn't want any of those options. He said it was up to us. Now, I don't know why Danny Bryanston, who was the developer of this subdivision 22 years ago, I don't know why he ran that sprinkler line in the wire like that, what he did, right? And that's the part that's been deeded from the developer to the city to maintain. So the HOA board and I now request that the city maintains the sprinklers that are located within the Cedar Cove Park boundaries. Are there any questions? If not, who can I follow up with on this issue?
I can't answer for the council as far as if there are any questions, but in terms of working with the city, I'm the point of contact as the city manager. I've talked with Mark about the situation a little bit and the perspective that he had on it. As a city, we totally understand the idea of we maintain the sprinklers in city property. There's no issue with that at all. It's just how do we get that so that we're maintaining a system that functions with the system that we've already got. And so that it's really how do we make the transition work, not do we want it or not want it. So yeah, we absolutely understand that.
Well, can I work with you? Because Mark didn't sound like he wanted to work with me one bit.
I'll be the main point of contact. They'll have to be involved since they understand the sprinkler system way better than I do, and they're going to be the ones maintaining it. But yeah, we'll work as a team, and I'll be involved.
Now, the HOA has not fixed any of those sprinklers, and so I noticed it's browning and dying up on that area. So probably, my number's there. I can give it to you. You can contact me. We can work on this quickly.
Yeah, we'll want to jump on it right away.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joe Franchell. I live at 800 East Cottonwood Road. You can probably already guess why I'm here, to discuss the RV park, the Riverside RV Park. So I've been here before and we've had meetings and the whole thing, and y'all know that I'm certainly opposed to the project, but so are all of my neighbors on Cottonwood Road, and so are my neighbors in Uinta. That we've all been opposed to it all along, and I feel that it continues to go forward. I think that it has gone forward, and I think probably some of you people on the council have not been all that happy with the project over time either. But my feeling is that you continue to move forward with this based on some fear of future litigation by the developer. And that's sad to me that we would be at this point right now based on fear of litigation, not what's in the best interest of the people on Cottonwood Road and what's in the best interest of the people, of our neighbors in Uinta. So I'm sad about that. It looks like that the council is moving forward. There's several items on the agenda today. If you do, I hope you don't, of course, but if you do move forward with this project, please develop some strong expectations on this thing. This thing could get way out of hand as time goes on. Strong expectations, strong sanctions for not complying with the expectations, and some built-in consequences. I know somebody mentioned a performance bond or something. I don't know anything about that legally, but something that would could be held over the developer's head if he didn't comply to, the limits of occupancy and all of the other things that he should apply, that he should adhere to. In my estimation, there's no real incentive for a developer of this project or a developer of any project like this to hold strict to sanctions and occupancy and that sort of thing, because that means lost revenue. And the main thing with this project is revenue, and if you're going to lose revenue, you're going to have a tendency to look a blind eye towards the occupancy and some of the behavior that goes on in that project. So anyway, I hope that the council will take this into account and make sure that there's some strong sanctions, and that also that there's some ways to, I guess in this day and age, we can't just talk about police the thing, because everybody's all upset about police and policing in this day and age. But at least to be able to monitor this project and make sure that the developer is complying and that everything is going as you set up. So anyway, that's my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, wife and me. That's a good idea.
My name is Dave Armstein. I live at 838 6600 South, just kitty corner to where the RV park development is being proposed. So this is going to have a major impact in my life and in my little area. I've been up here. I've met with some of you individually. I've talked to different members here, and I think you pretty well know where I stand on this. I think this is a bad idea for South Wheeler. If you look at your social media page, I think your constituents feel the same way, as well as your neighbors. So I hope that if this does go forward, just to reiterate what Joe was saying, there will be severe ramifications for the developer for not following the rules, because it doesn't affect the people over here on South Wheeler Drive. It may not affect the developer, but it's going to affect me and my family very much. And I would hope you would look after your neighbors like we would hope to look after them. Thank you.
Thanks.
I try not to touch it. Yeah.
Michael Poff, 154 East Harper Way. Just to piggyback on there, I wrote down some ideas, limited to the 3 minutes. I tried to just get some of them that would stand out, but I think it's interesting in the development agreement that the owner, quoting here, in its sole discretion, can adjust the number of LTSs up or down at any time. We had a conversation about this back in January. We're going to hold them to those statistics. So it's interesting that now they have that flexibility to increase or decrease those at their sole discretion at any time, especially when reporting on the tough funds and how that impacts the city. So conceivably, they could say, because it's to their sole discretion. Another thing I wanted to bring up, I brought it up last time, residency is an issue. Now the federal government, the state government, the county government, even the city has rights and obligations if you're residency in certain locations. And how are we going to address that residency issue? Department of Transportation requires you within 10 days to notify them if they change an address. I know that it's identified that they won't have mailing addresses there, but they can still claim residency there without having a mailing address with that. So one of the things there, secondary access is a little bit confusing to me, because if we're doing secondary access for emergency purposes, we're not following the ordinances. City ordinance clearly states that it needs to be 20 feet and you have to allow for turnarounds. So I guess running them down a trail that according to the document is not going to be, portions of it won't be constructed by the developer. And I mean, I guess pedestrian evacuation would make sense, but we don't allow for pedestrian evacuation access only for development. So it's just interesting. I'd be curious to get some input on why we're accepting that as a secondary access, or even promoting that as a secondary access. It doesn't look like, and again, I'm not an engineer, that you have to turn around to get a fire truck or emergency vehicle down that secondary access. This is one thing that I'm very interested to see how the city does this, because according to the city ordinance, if the city finds evidence of special landscape buffering, it can mitigate the adverse impacts on or from the park, then you can reduce that setback. And so if we're going to say fence mitigates landscape buffering requirements, then we probably could reevaluate how we address setbacks within the city. But it is interesting because I am curious to see what kind of evidence the city has produced in order to justify that. That's 10(7)F 2B 2 little b on that. The city ordinance 8-1-7 big B 1 talks about separate water users, and it defines what those would mean. 8.1.7 big B number 2 addresses some of those concerns as well, and it also talks in 8.1.7 3B that any RV connection can't be more than 2 weeks unless they have a water connection, and they can share a water connection, but they have to have that water connection. So hopefully the city, according to our ordinance, will be capturing all 100 water connection rates, unless of course they're visitors for 2 weeks, according to code. So I know I put some other comments on Facebook. Hope you guys are following along, because I didn't want to take up too much time. Got some budgeting issues, but if you guys use that, I have the open house for that. In the future, if something is tabled that's a big hot topic issue, it'd be nice if we could have another public hearing. Maybe don't close the public hearing so that we can have public comment during that portion of the meeting instead of an hour down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Keeping the social distancing. Paul Stern, 2527 Deer Run Drive. In sticking with social distancing, I would like to pass out the packets to everybody. That's the way I maintain it.
You should have made airplanes.
It might be best just to hand them out. If it's all right, I'll hand them out. But I want to make sure I follow the rules.
Appreciate it, Paul.
I'll stand up and take mine.
Rubber logo. There. And the reason why I'm doing this, you can see from my very first comment. This way you can hear me. Anyway, I realize that with the issues surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, the city has attempted to keep citizens informed and able to participate in South Weaver City government, and I applaud these efforts. But I would like to bring an issue to the City Council that occurred surrounding the Planning Commission Tri-2 meeting of 3 June 20 concerning the car wash. After following the instructions provided by the city for participating in the online Zoom meeting, and after having provided public comments to the city's public comments website, I made my presentation. My presentation was based on the fact that I had submitted my written comments hours earlier, that my verbal comments were a summary, and that the Planning Commission would have seen my 3-page series of inputs, background information, followed by the comments. Few, if any, of the Planning Commission received my documentation, and as such, had no idea regarding the specifics. Let's follow this stuff. Okay. The specifics I addressed in the document. When I told them I sent the document public comments, I was informed that they did not receive the document because I talked to some of the planning commissioners after the meeting. I was asked by them that in the future, if I would send my input directly to them because the city was not giving them the information they needed. There appears to be a disconnect in providing the commissioners/council members with public information all the time. Is there a way to have a backup plan? Number 2, comment regarding this meeting's agenda. There were several agenda items listed on the agenda page that were not shown as titles in the remainder of the packet. In some cases, it was difficult to determine where the transition between agenda items was occurring. In 5 out of the 14 agenda items, the agenda item number was not shown with the associated packet documentation. Agenda item 6 is comments on the budget package, primarily on the text of the package. Please note, these are being provided not to be critical, but to enhance the city's product. General comment. Typically, in official documents, when a blank page occurs, the statement, "This page intentionally left blank," is put on that page so that the reader knows that there really was no information on that page. Regarding page 35, packet page 66. First paragraph. South Weaver City is contracted. It should read South Weaver City contracts for public safety services through. We do not perform the actual services. Page 45, packet page 76. First paragraph. South Weaver City Streets Department does not finance the city's maintenance. The South Weaver City Streets Department fund does. Page 73, packet page 104. Page 79, packet 110, and page 83. Need to have the word fund capitalized to be inconsistent with the other fund area discussions in this package. Number 4, question on agenda items 9, 10, and 11 regarding approvals for the RV park. Since these agenda items numbers are not shown in the packet, I will address my comments, concerns by using the packet page number for reference. Packet page 150. The drawing shows a 2,360 square foot office. And as per the other areas of the documentation, it's for on-site staff, not limited to length of stay restrictions. This office structure could be assumed to be the residence of that on-site staff member. If that is the case, should not this building be constructed in accordance with South Weaver City's residential building codes, not just as an office? Just a point to look at. Packet pages 168 to 171. Reference, the South Weaver Planning Commission meeting of 23 May 19 minutes. Have all of the concerns in that been addressed, especially those shown on packet page 171 as follows? And this following came directly from that packet, from the meeting notes. And just a quick review, I mean, we're trying to compare what they have here with the 55 pages of documentation that was provided for the RV park itself. And the last item is number 5, agenda item 13, legal services contract, packet page 181. Since 3 firms responded, why was a comparison table for rates, experience, etc. not shown as has been done for nearly every other competitive proposal received by the city? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Corinne Johnson, 8020 South, 2500 East. I left my copy on my printer, so I'm reading this on my phone, so I apologize. I am very grateful to be addressing all of you, Mayor and City Council, in person today. There is great value in public comment being heard publicly. The opportunity to look my representatives in the eye and acknowledge that they heard what we have to say is a privilege. It's one that I took for granted and will be forever grateful for. It is also a privilege that we are completely dependent on. We depend on you, our local government, to provide us this opportunity. I was reminded by a Planning Commission member of this fact in a recent email exchange regarding public comment. He stated, I am interested in making sure you understand what our rights are as citizens. 1, as citizens, it is your right to observe the business of the government. 2, as citizens, you have the right to speak at public comment time. 3, as citizens, you have the right to send correspondence to public officials. 4, as citizens, you have the right to lobby your public officials. 5, as citizens, you have a right to vote for your leaders. But as citizens, you and I do not have the right to be involved in public meetings other than observe. Public officials don't have to read citizen email, listen to citizens, or even comment on citizen comment. Now, if they are good people, they will try and help and educate the citizens on what they can do. So since I have now been educated, I am now appealing to the good people that are here, that have been elected to represent us, for the continued privilege of physically attending city council meetings, speaking to the public at public comment times, and even though I have no right to do so, asking you to listen and to consider what we have to say. I feel that the citizens of South Weaver, myself included, have earned as much by our consistent efforts to get informed on the issues, educate ourselves on city policy and procedure, research facts, gather ideas and opinions from our neighbors, and then show up to share our findings with you and our feelings and our concerns with you. And we do this in the proper manner at the city council meeting and the planning commission meeting. Moving forward, I ask that you please continue to facilitate the ability for the citizens of South Weaver to gather together in chambers, share public comment, and engage with you, our elected representatives. If a situation arises in which there truly is no possible way to meet in person again, you could at least afford us the courtesy of reading aloud the public comment citizens send in their emails. Thank you for your service and for your dedication.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you. I have public comment by Julie Lumsey that I'd like to read.
Amy, could you just state your name and address for?
Do you want me to state mine or hers?
Well, you're speaking, so yeah, that would be great. And then hers too, I guess.
Okay, because I have public comment for myself as well.
Oh, okay. Well, state hers first and then say yours when you.
I'm Amy Mitchell, 1923 Durham Drive, and I'm stating this for Julie Lumsey, 2541 East, 8200 South. And we're all covered. These are her comments. Why are we making all of these major community impacting decisions when we can't even meet in person in a public session with the ability to comment and share our concerns, likes, dislikes, ask questions, and even be heard by others in the community as well as the council like we used to? YouTube videos and email comments are not cutting it. Schools, work, sports, marriages, funerals, our very lives have all had to be put on hold while the state and the world deals with everything that is currently going on. But our city's business and the need to approve development plans and rezone requests for developers seems to be moving full steam ahead. This frustrates me to no end, especially the more I think on it. Why are we letting developers' plans move forward when our lives are on hold and our voices cannot truly be heard? The lack of and the limited amount of public opinion and insight might actually be a disservice to the consideration of what is best for the South Weaver community as a whole, especially on items where once approval is given, the city will be hard pressed to take it back. Please think on this for a moment tonight and before making any decisions that we as a community will just have to live with. Thank you for listening, stay safe, and I hope we can all get back to living soon. You don't need to. I'll clean this off now. Okay. Gather my thoughts. So, Amy Mitchell, 1923 Durham Drive. Sorry?
For yourself.
Yes, this is for me. Thank you for meeting in chambers tonight and allowing residents to exercise our right to come in person and make public comment. After my experience trying to make public comment at both PC meetings, I was more than frustrated. I appreciate the ability being able to speak with you tonight. I'm sure you're very much aware of not being able to comment on the first meeting after several failed attempts, and that meeting was rescheduled. I then waited my turn for the second meeting and struggled to watch the meeting as well as wait to get in. And I was trying to participate and watch the meeting, but there was a delay between the two. And so then when it was my turn to get in, then I have a lot of feedback and I had to turn off my meeting so that I could make my public comment, but then I couldn't watch the meeting that I was making public comment at. I could only see Rob and maybe a couple of the others, but I couldn't see the whole meeting going on. I thought it took a long time and it was a pain in the butt. I think public comment seems to be lost and not addressed in meetings because most of the time when we've made public comment, it's not even referred to. It's just kind of skimmed over. It might come out once in a while, but I feel like it's just, as citizens, we don't know what public comment was made until after the meeting's already done and we can go back and read those public comments. So, and then when you read through them, you notice that some of that hasn't been addressed. That's frustrating. It's much nicer to come here, look you in the eye and speak with you and then hope that my comments have some kind of an impact. I know you've all been given the same emails from the Planning Commission that we sent for public comment. I hope you read through them. I'm going to touch on a few of those things. This is what I addressed to the Planning Commission. I says, I have looked through the packet and I have several concerns in regards to Morty's Car Wash. In looking through the documents, there were several times it refers to the car wash having 3 self-serve bays and 3 automatic bays. Yet in the drawings, it shows 4 self-serve bays and 3 automatic. I figured it was an oversight. I hoped that it was 3 and 3. It's not, it's 4 and 3. I remember back to a meeting, I found some notes and I wish I would have written a date on it. When it was first presented and talked about, it was 3 self-serve bays and 2 automatic. So we've definitely jumped in size. If you guys drive on 193 like I do, you pass the Maverick, that the Patriot Car Wash there by the Maverick, it only has 3 self-serve and 3 automatic. If you look at the size of it, it seems big. Adding another bay to that, even bigger. And I think that our city is not going to support that much size. We can get car washes in every direction. So I just think that we should scale that back. I noticed that the packet was a little bit messy. There were places where it referred to this look and then places it referred to a different look. And it just seemed kind of discombobulated. It wasn't consistent. And if it's going to be approved, I think it needs to be consistent. All the T's should be crossed, all the I's should be dotted. And we should know what we're getting. Not, hey, we're going to get 3 and 3. Oh, wait. Well, we started building 4 and 3, so sorry, you're just going to have to live with it because it's going to cost too much money to take that out. I want to know how the city plans on addressing the parking issue at Maverick. I brought that up a couple months ago along the south side where the dump station is. As summer's kicking into gear and people are lining up to dump their trailers, you also have delivery trucks that are dropping off stuff. And there was a UPS truck there the other day. There was trucks on both sides of that little strip behind the store. And we had to wait for one of them to move because there wasn't enough room to get through with our trailer that we felt safely could happen. Anyways, I brought it up then. I brought it up again for the Planning Commission meeting that I think having the entrance to the car wash go through that south side of Maverick is a mistake. I think the car wash should stand alone. And my comment was completely dismissed. Rob Osborne said, well, I'm not worried about that. I think there's plenty of room. I'm not concerned about that. He said, that's Maverick's problem. Well, I have concern about that. Maverick is already established. The car wash is not. Why should Maverick have to take on the problem when they didn't ask for it? They didn't build for it. If Marty's Car Wash wants to come in, let them deal with the problem, not Maverick. That's not fair to keep that responsibility onto an existing business. We asked about the fencing and addressed some issues there. That was also dismissed. I feel like sometimes you try your hardest to be involved, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. As we look at this new development that's being proposed down on the Stevens property, I think we should address our transitional use code before we even entertain any of that stuff. Because I have never heard any person that I've known say, I want to live right between a hotel and some storage units and in front of a gas station. That's where I want to build my home. I don't think it's a safe place for children. I don't think this car wash is a safe place for Highmark. I have kids that go to that school, and to just keep a chain link fence in between, because that's what was done between Maverick, it was an oversight. The chain link fence between Maverick and the school was an oversight. I think the chain link fence between the car wash and the school is an oversight again, that we have control over. We can do something about that. Let me just make sure I touched on everything. I think that was all that I had. I appreciate your time. I appreciate being able to come in and see you and make public comment in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any comment online? Okay. All right. Is there any further public comment? All right. Thank you so much, all of you that participated. I too love being here to see your faces and and listen to your comments. And I hope you know that sometimes we don't always, we take notes, but we don't always comment on every comment that's made at the podium. But I think you will find if you reach out to this council that they are probably one of the most receptive councils. I could say probably anywhere in the U.S., to be honest with you. And I've dealt with other councils as well. And we have a great council here who really tries hard to respond and answer your questions. So if you don't get all of your answers here, please reach out to the council. Appreciate that. All right, we will move on. Our first action item is approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the meeting minutes of June 12th, 2020.
May.
Oh, sorry, I apologize, May. The minutes of May 19th, 2020, and the minutes of May 26th, 2020. Are there comments or questions? Then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And
Second.
Councilman Halverson
Second.
and Councilman Windsor, thank you. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote beginning with Councilman Windsor.
Aye.
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 And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5 is public hearing to open and amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. The current city budget for 2019-2020 was adopted on August 20th, 2019. During the fiscal year, unanticipated changes and expenses have occurred. This year's budget needs to be opened and amended to reflect those changes. To amend an adopted budget, a public hearing is required to afford citizens an opportunity to address the proposed changes. Before we open the hearing, I'd like to turn the time over to Mark McCray to give an explanation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
As we approach the end of this calendar year, fiscal year, we always find that there are a few things that have changed from a year ago. We start our budget in February, and when you go 18 months later, sometimes things have changed a little bit. We have a few changes in tonight that are being presented to you for amending the 2019-2020 budget. I'm going to address the expenditures first. We had a change in personnel where a person was moved. This is basically our development coordinator. Her salaries were, part of her salaries were initially budgeted in administrative. They're now coming out of the planning commission. So we're going to take 25 out of administrative salaries and put it into the planning. We had a lot of development this year, as well as the time taken on the general plan, so our engineering expenses were up. We've had also our inspections. We lost our city inspector, and so we had to go with a third-party contractor. And that really increased the cost that we've had on our inspections. And so that's the reason for those two. We've been working to get the money from, to prepare to install the street lights that have been paid for by developers. So if you look up in the upper part where it says developer payments for improvements, most of that is for the street lights. And we bought the street lights, and next year's budget will have the installation of those street lights. But the cost of those street lights, this is a project that we hadn't really gotten into when we prepared the budget. And so we're increasing the cost of what it's cost to buy the street lights that have previously been paid for or planned for by the developers. In the parks, we've had some promotions, some new certificates where they've got a bonus by becoming certified. And so their salaries are up a little bit. The engineering costs, both for the planned projects for next year in parks and also for wetlands, as we need to put another 10,000 there. And utilities, for the different, on the parks and sprinkler systems and so forth, and the water is up a little higher than we anticipated. There's one change that is on the resolution, so if you go to your resolution, that is not on this, that is not here on this summary. In the last couple of days, we realized We bought 100 more garbage cans to try and get us through. In 1 week, 25 of those disappeared. I don't know whether it's the pandemic and people are staying home and cleaning up more and asking for there's more second cans. But we've had a lot of people move in. We need to place an order for 300 more cans. And so we're asking for an increase in of 16,000 a person. And in this year's budgets, we can place the order tomorrow.
Mac, just to clarify, they didn't disappear, meaning they got stolen or got, walked
They
away.
got used.
They were distributed in the proper manner. But
Yes,
They were requested.
they were requested and delivered. Okay.
Thanks for that
But
clarification.
our inventory, they just didn't disappear awful fast. We ordered an extra 100 cans. They are being requested and being delivered at a lot higher rate than we ever anticipated. So thanks for the clarification. Yeah. So those are the changes that are being proposed in 2019, 2020 budget. And so I'll turn it over, if you have questions before it gets turned over to the public hearing, I'll just sit down and you can have your public hearing.
Before you sit down, do we have any comments or questions?
I have a question. You mentioned on the sanitation garbage procurement, you had placed that order this week. Are they going to show up before June 30th, in which to be on the fiscal year budget, or are they going to show up next fiscal year? This should be on next fiscal year's budget.
Well, it's both, and let me tell you why. We can't place the order till July 1st if the money's going to come out of next year's budget. So if we double budget, we're not going to get 600 cans, but if we put it in this year's budget, we can order today. But they probably won't be delivered until next year's budget when money comes out of next year's budget. It's just dealing with the state law at the end of the year and allowing us to order the cans 3 weeks earlier. If that fairly confuses you, it confuses a lot of people. In order to place the order today and not on July 1st, we have to put money into this year's budget.
It has to be properly appropriated before you can expend the funds.
Yes.
Thank you.
But we're not going to get 600 cans. We're just going to get 3.
And to clarify, there was not an order put in today.
No.
We're waiting for that go ahead and a budget amendment, and then an order would be placed, but it would give us 3 weeks
And the
ahead
reason-
of when we could do it if we wait.
And the reason that's critical is one of the suppliers we bought from in the past is 9 weeks out right now. And so that it wouldn't be an additional 3 weeks. We realize that people are going to want the can.
That's my question.
I got another question. So we currently have 75 extra. Is that all we have, you said, or we
Yes.
got 100 plus we had others on top of
No,
that?
no, we're down to 75 cans.
And so what rate are we, other than the 25 from the pandemic, what rate are we?
If it
handing out
continues
cans?
at the rate it was this last week, we will be out in 3 weeks. We place the order, that means we'll be out for 6 weeks. We're just trying to get a jump on this.
What was the rate prior to this past week?
We normally use about 300 cans a year. And then, but the spring is a time when a lot of cans are used. And I don't know, and we've had a lot of homes or people are moving in. They finished up the homes, so we could say nobody can move into the new homes until we get the garbage cans, but that's not a feasible thing to do. So we'll put a restriction on second cans for right now, so that we hold the cans that we do have until we get more for those who are moving into a new home for their first can. And we'll just have to hold off on the request for second cans until we get the supply. But that's why we know we're going to need them, and we're just trying to get them as soon. We anticipated 100 would do it, and the demand has been greater than we anticipated until we got into the next fiscal year. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to open our public hearing to open and amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
So moved.
Councilman Windsor, do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, man, that was a tight one. Councilwoman Betty, I'm gonna give it to. All right. Okay, we're now open for public hearing. And hearing none, Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, Councilman Windsor, and then
I'll second that.
Councilwoman Albert seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and the public hearing is closed. We will move on to item number 6, which is another public hearing for the fiscal year 2020-2021 tentative budget. Staff and the city council have worked together over the past several months to put together a balanced budget for all funds, which is fiscally responsible and meets the needs of the city for the fiscal year ending June 20th, 2021. All cities in Utah are required to adopt a city tentative budget outlining expected revenues and expenditures for the next fiscal year. The city council adopted its tentative budget for 2020-2021 on May 12th, 2020. We will now have a public hearing. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing? Oh, wait, let's have Mark McCray stand and make a few comments first.
I'll try not to say anything's just disappearing this time, especially when I'm talking about money. There are several changes. What I wanted to do, normally we just open it for the tentative budget for public comment, but I thought it was important since there have been some changes that are being proposed, which you will, when you adopt the final budget next week, there are some changes that I'd like to bring to your attention that will be in the tentative budget. And so the public would know about that. What some of those are, now, we have several changes, and if you look over the compensation study for the was done on the employee salary, a market study was done. It was presented to the committee, and there was some recommendations for some salary adjustments. So there are a few minor adjustments in salaries that you will see in there. We're proposing to increase in administration, professional and technical, the amount for the attorney to hire the property rights attorney. I believe that's on the agenda. But we've added $75,000, hopefully to cover that, and we hope that it's a lot less than that, but that's in there. We have an increase of $110,000, which is to cover the streetlight installation. I mentioned before in this year's budget, we bought it. This is money coming from the developers to pay for the streetlight installation. Jumping down, we did not get the purchase of property for a new public workshop accomplished in this fiscal year, so we pre-budgeted $800,000 for that change, or for that purchase. Excuse me, the capital projects, the increase for streetlight installation is 210. We're increasing the revenues 110, which is the developer's portion. Then the last major change is in the water projects. After when the contract or the agreement with the Job Corps and Department of Labor was approved, their share of the East Bend transmission line increased by $565,000. So the project has been increased by $565,000, all of which will come as revenues from federal government. In addition, we increased the cost on the city share by $50,000 in anticipation of the property easements costing more than we originally anticipated. So those are just wanted to make public the proposed changes, which you will see in next week's budget. I do appreciate Paul's comments on ways that we can always improve that. Staff has gone over it this last week. I appreciate those staff members who have looked over the tentative budget, and there'll be a lot of little minor things. It's just semantics, corrections of spelling, and those kinds of things. But these are the dollar figures that are going to be changed.
Thank you, Mark. Are there questions or comments?
I do have one on the capital projects land. The $800,000 that we had budgeted for this year and are moving to next year. Are we taking that out of this year's budget so that we don't think we have an extra $800,000 in our
we don't spend it, it just stays there. So we're not spending it. So it's in next year's budget. It's, money that was gonna be spent this year will stay in the capital projects budget next year.
But that reduces our overall budget for the year, and so we need
Yeah,
to make sure
we're
we're
not-
projecting to something less than 800,000.
Yeah, what we generally do is, when we open this, we didn't need to open this year's budget if an expenditure is gonna be lower than what we expected. So that's the reason I didn't open, when we opened the tentative, the adoption of the amendments to this year's budget, I did not take 800,000 out. But it is the same 800,000, we're only spending it once, it'll be spent next year instead of this year. But you're right, we're just gonna leave it there until after July 1st, and just decided what we're.
Right, yeah, I understand it rolls over. I just don't want people to look at our budget and say, oh, we have 800,000 more that we haven't spent so far this year, and we're gonna go spend it on this or that.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's just, wasn't, an item that wasn't spent this year and it'll be in next year's budget. Sometimes you get those all the time, and there's sometimes anticipated, it's like the fire truck, you have to budget it for 2 or 3 years in a row because it takes 18 months to get it built, so. Anything else? Appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Mark. All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing for the fiscal year 2020-2021 tentative budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Windsor and Councilman Halverson seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now open for public hearing on the budget.
All right, Corinne Johnson, 8020 South, 2500 East. So I would like to address the fire department budget for the 2021 fiscal year. The overall budget that's laid out is $603,000. So as I've watched city council meetings over the past year, it's become apparent that we spend a lot of money in our fire department. I do not oppose investing in our fire department, but on several occasions, cheaper options or less expensive options or different options have been offered or presented that are often quickly disregarded. Or a lot of time is spent in justifying really expensive items that seem maybe a little extravagant. This concerns me, and it seems that when it comes to the fire department, the South Weaver City has money to burn. We should be spending the appropriate amount of money based on the size of our city and the amount of revenue we collect, and that's the tax revenue we collect. I did some research on these numbers and was alarmed to find that we spent a very disproportionate amount of our city's tax revenue on the fire department in comparison to other many cities do in the state of Utah. The chart below lays out what I found. We are already overspending on our fire department, and I feel we need to be realistic on how much money we can truly afford to spend there. So I'll read this little chart for you guys. I'm sorry I don't have a copy. I left it in my printer. So for South Weaver, for example, last year's or the 2020 budget was $643,000. Our tax revenue was $1.8 million, and that means that 35% of our tax revenue was spent in our fire department. Riverdale spends $1.7 million on their fire department, but their tax revenue is $7.4 million, making it 22% we spend on fire. Syracuse is also around $2 million for the fire department and $9 million in tax revenue, another 22%. Syracuse spends around $2 million on the fire department, and their tax revenue is also around $9 million, again 22%. Roy City spends about $4 million on the fire department, $18 million in tax revenue. They're also at 22%. Brigham City Fire is about $1.4 million. They have an $8 million tax revenue, 17%. Farmington is 1.3 on the fire, 9 million in tax revenue, 14%. Price spends $512,000 on their fire department, 5 million in tax revenue, about 10%. And Layton City is a $5 million on their fire department, 30 million in tax revenues, 7%. I'd like to focus a minute on price. There's a reason I looked at a lot of budgets today and a lot of things today, but Price stood out to me because it's a very small town. And it's similar to our town. The population is a little bigger. But their description of their fire department is pretty awesome. It says the Price City Fire Department is a full-service fire department which provides structure and wildfire, land suppression, emergency medical services, vehicle extrication and crash rescue, confined space rescue, high-angle rescue, hazardous materials response and airport firefighting and rescue, fire and arson investigation, as well as business fire prevention inspections. We are a National Fire Protection Association combination department which employs a combination of 25 full-time and paid on-call personnel. South Weber employs 11 firefighters. And Price manages to do all of this on a budget $100,000 less than our city budget. They also have 5 times the tax revenue that they could spend on their fire department, yet they still keep their fire department expenses in check, and it's just 10% of their revenues. So let me remind you that we spend 35% of our revenues on our fire department. I do recognize that our budget is dropping by about $41,000 in this upcoming fiscal year, but I still feel this is way too much of our revenue. To get us to 25%, which is still higher than the average, our budget would need to be around $450,000. I'm grateful as a South Weber citizen that we have full service fire department, and I understand that it costs money, but I feel there's a huge imbalance. South Weber citizens are also asking for additional resources to be spent on our Parks and Rec program, trails, streetlights, crucial capital facilities infrastructure, and lots of projects that our city needs for now and into the future. It would be a disservice to South Weber citizens if you as a city council do not take a closer look at the fire department, their employment structure, equipment purchases, and the question needed whether or not we need to expand the ENS services. I've also heard on numerous occasions that our fire department spends the majority of its time and resources answering calls outside of our community. Is that what the citizens of South Weber are paying for? I'm asking the Public Safety Committee to immediately launch an inquiry into the use of South Weber taxpayer dollars in regards to the number of calls, the number of employees, and the use of South Weber City fire equipment outside of our city. I'm very proud of the South Weber City Fire Department and the sterling reputation they have amongst fire departments in this community and the work Chief Tolman has done to earn that reputation. However, we must make sure that South Weber citizens do not disproportionately pay too much for services we don't need, are underused, or are overused to serve other communities more than they serve our own communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corinne.
Michael Pop, 154 East Harpaway. Couple of things here. I know I brought it up to some of you. My cable bill still shows my tax going to Riverdale. And it's been doing that for years. I call the state, I get so frustrated because they don't care. I call Riverdale, they don't care. Anyways, there's some way that maybe this fiscal year we could see about making sure we're capturing all of the municipal taxes that are being sent. I know cable's kind of a tricky issue because they say that we have to stub off of Riverdale's hub. And it all surfaced when that stupid census we had to do, and it kept saying Weber County, Weber County, Weber County. Weber County. And anyways, post office discussion, all that kind of stuff. But it reminds me again every time I see that bill, and I don't know how many other people do that. It happened when I was on 475. Now I moved closer to Riverdale, and it still happens. So that would happen. The other thing I'd like to bring up is back in 2012, I think it was 18% of our general fund budget went to streets and roads. Now that we created this annoying tough that hopefully you guys would reconsider, at least lowering now that we've got so much money stuck away in that fund. But I don't know if you guys know how much out of our general fund is going to fund streets and roads. It's kind of like the Idaho lottery. Everybody kept saying, oh, more money to the schools, more money to the schools. Well, you get that other money coming in, and then it's like, oh, we can spend this money somewhere else. And so prioritizing some of our funds just have a tendency to grow. The more money you put, people find ways to spend it. That's just how government works. And so, anyways, just suggest that maybe we look at that tough fund since we have so much money in there. The other thing, I love city staff. I've been in this process before, but there's a tendency with government employees that we're going to do a salary survey because we got to do a salary survey so everybody's right. And so we'll do one 2 years later. Cities we're comparing with, oh, we got to pay people more than they pay in South Weaver, so they do one, and it's just somersaults back and I guess pickleballs back and forth. And is it? I don't know. You don't see that happen in the private sector where. Anyways, that's just what I say. Just be careful with those salary surveys because you'll do another one in 2 years and another one in 2 years. And the cities we're comparing with, so they got to pay more than South Weaver, and then, anyways, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Michael. And thanks for putting it in terms that I can understand. All right. Any further public comment during our public hearing for the budget? And hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Councilwoman Petty, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Alberts, excuse me. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And our public hearing is closed. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Appreciate it. All right, next item on the agenda is number 7, Resolution 2020 through 23, budget amendments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Are there any comments or questions on this? And do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-23?
Mayor, I make the motion that we approve resolution 2020-23 to amend the fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20 budget.
Thank you, Councilman Winston. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Soderquist, thank you. Any further comment? Then we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 8 is Resolution 2020-03, Development Agreement for the Riverside RV Resort. The CUP for the CUP is called the Conditional Use Permit for the RV Resort plans and permits were reviewed on December 10th, 2019 by City Council. Council chose to form a working committee to research, review, and recommend amendments to the CUP to the full council. This working committee presented their work for consideration to the council on January 28th, 2020. They brought forth an amended CUP along with a proposed development agreement. Considering public comment, developer comment, and council discussion, the council continued the items and requested the working committee to go back and work on further amendments. Some of those items include the city-county boundary, ingress, egress, fire protection, and water system setup. The committee has since met multiple times to discuss these and other issues relating to the development proposal. The final plans now include 2 points of ingress, egress, compliance with applicable fire codes, privately owned water lines, and fencing along I-84 that will include a cable barrier and opaque masonry. The development agreement addresses the boundary line situation with approval on the undisputed acreage and contingent approval on the disputed acres based on a satisfactory resolution. Are there comments or questions on this? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve resolution 2020-03?
I got some comments.
I think we got comments.
Oh, well, everyone was
Hold on,
quiet.
I'm thinking.
Okay, let's have Councilman Soderquist.
Okay. Councilman Halverson.
Go for it, Blair. Okay, Councilman Alverson.
What paragraph? Wasn't it paragraph 4, Brandon, that the cable barrier was in?
No, it's
Right.
under
I'm just,
fencing towards the bottom.
that's right.
It's in
10.
19.
Yeah, 19.
Yes, yeah.
I think one of the questions and public comment was how is the fence and the cable barrier going to justify changing the setbacks? The setback is only being forgiven, or I shouldn't say that, an exception along Interstate 84, which they also have that from UDOT, the fire department, and everybody else. So we actually added, UDOT did not put any restrictions on them. We added the cable barrier and fence. The setbacks are not applicable to anywhere, if I correct me if I'm wrong, but the 84 property line.
Yes.
That's the way this one states it. It says nearest or adjoining Interstate 84.
Blair, can I clarify, when you say the setbacks are not applicable except 84, the setbacks are being met. The code is being met on every other boundary except for the 84. And so that's where the variance was requested. And the discussion was that the combination cable barrier fence and opaque masonry fence would create the safety precautions that the setbacks would do as well.
Which one I personally felt that gave it some kind of buffering with the masonry fence, which UDOT was not requiring anything but the fence that's there now.
Blair, can I also add, I don't think this was pointed out before, but since it was brought up in the, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay.
You don't have to lean that far.
I'm just gonna take this off for a second. In the code, it mentions landscaping, and the requirement is 15%, but they're providing 40. And it also mentions a park-like feel, and their landscape plan, I think, of course, that's up to the determination. It's in the eye of the beholder a little bit, but includes a lot of park-like landscaping. So those are all things that I think were considered as part of the code in allowing that exception.
I would also like to mention that in our discussions, we met with, is Fessler a captain?
Yes.
Fire
Captain
captain.
Fessler. He's the fire marshal.
Marshal. I'm so sorry. I could not think of his rank. We talked with the fire department about this cable barrier fence, and it is very strong and will stop oncoming traffic. So we wanted to make sure that that was something to protect the visitors there at the park.
Okay. Other comments?
I got one or two. Just a quick question on the boundary resolution that mentions Exhibit C. I didn't find that in there. Was it not labeled, but it was one of the attachments? It's supposed to show the boundary areas.
Well, I saw.
That's on Exhibit C, but it doesn't find the Exhibit C. It's supposed to spell out the boundaries between counties.
Yeah,
I can find it on a different.
The label might be on the bottom of the page.
It's on, the label's actually on the far right in the drawing.
All right, I'll take another look. I looked a few times, wasn't coming across it.
Page 141 of the packet. Page 141 of the packet.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to address a comment from public comment about the second egress. When we were talking with the fire department, they also stated their intent on the second egress is simply to get people out. So they are not concerned about RVs coming out. It is getting people out. However, they can do that quickly and safely.
The fire department wouldn't even let them take their trailers out. They will force them to leave without. And because they just had fought that a similar fire in the day before. And so it was, they will not let them take their trailers and hook up. They will make them leave immediately.
And they did say that the turnaround was sufficient space for a fire truck and equipment to get through.
May I add regarding the second egress there and the conversations with the fire department? I know when we first started this discussion, the idea was blazing inferno like the previous fire that was ripping down the freeway, and that was the idea of when a second egress was needed. That's not the type of emergency that the second egress is actually required and needed for. If there's that type of event, they're getting everybody out, leaving equipment and trailers and all of that kind of thing. So that was the discussion, that it's more of the type of event where the fire truck comes in and needs to do something. Maybe it's an emergency response for EMS, not necessarily fire, but other people need to be able to get out because the fire truck will be blocking the main entrance. So in the case of a major evacuation, the main entrance and the secondary entrance can be used. In the case of an emergency response where the fire truck or a other type of apparatus is blocking that main entrance, that's when the secondary access would be used.
Mayor, I have 2 comments.
Yes.
The first may be form of a clarification for staff. Based upon a public comment about transportation utility funds and the adjustment up or down long-term stays, as I understand it, even if the developer was to have every site as a short-term stay, there would still be a transportation utility fee collected. It's just a proration between how many. Okay. The second question more goes back to maybe the committee. I understand this is being a development agreement. It has a 10-year term, but in paragraph 15, it talks about the length of stay for patrons of being 120 days. What happens after 10 years?
I have that same concern.
I thought we addressed that already, that the length of that, I thought changed.
Yeah, if you look at the,
Because it only pertains, someone asked that question the other day, and I don't remember the answer.
I understand development agreement is you got 10 years to build your development. I get that part, but you have a paragraph in here that talks about your length of stay for the patrons. Does that also need to be in the CUP, which is not at this time? If this has an expiration date, that's important to me. And it should be in the other document, or it should be documented someplace else. Otherwise, they can go back to whatever the code says.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would recommend we put it in the CUP as well then.
Put what in the CUP exactly?
The length of stay.
The length of stay, that's part of one of the.
Well, but
But
the problem
It's in
is,
the agreement though.
so the other, to that same point, Wayne, you bring up a good point. Then we deal with the tough expires, all of that stuff would expire. We basically can't have this expire as long as the development is there. Period. The 10-year term would have to be stricken.
For the ongoing elements, that's true.
Yeah. And it's something we didn't discuss, McKay and his attorney and everybody else that was on that conversation.
Yeah, so the developer is here. A couple of the development team that were not able to attend in person are involved in the Zoom. So if we have questions for them, they can answer. But I know that McKay is here to answer questions as well, but this may be something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I would say that definitely needs to be addressed. I have the same concern after 10 years and what? It sounds like we're just trying to make this RV park really nice for 10 years but it's going to be here for inevitably. So
Yeah,
we need to address that.
I agree completely. I think the intent all along was for it to be indefinite on those types of items, but that's just kind of the standard language, and we've discussed that before in terms of those construction type elements, having a time period in there. Yeah, that's just something that is a little bit unique here that we need to nail down.
Council
Dave, you have thoughts on that? Putting you on the spot a little bit, but if we need to have the others speak too.
Sure, they've texted me a little bit. McKay Winkle, the developer of the project. Yeah, it was, honestly, I thought the whole thing was indefinite. So
Can we just strike that?
that's, I texted our attorney. I don't know if there's any provisions that should end before that. But yeah, definitely the 120 days that can be on the CUP. And then, what was the other one?
Tough.
10 years.
Yeah, we always assume that would be forever.
McKay, this is Wade Budge, and Council Chair, may I just speak for a moment?
Yeah, you can be heard.
Okay, thank you. I agree with what McKay just said, and what we would propose is that we would say that the term shall be coterminous, that's the term, coterminous with the CUP. And so we would just revise that provision of the development agreement. That way we'll be linking the CUP, which we hope to have approved later tonight with this agreement. That way, you know, you're getting both the benefits and the owner is obligated to meet all the obligations in the DA.
That only works if we put these in the CUP. If this has an expiration date on it.
No, I think he's suggesting that change the expiration date to say it's co-term.
Okay, then I'm okay with that.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
So clarify for me, Wade, there, when you say coterminous, I get it. When you say coterminous with the CUP, then I start to wonder a little bit. Can you explain that?
So yeah, let's just read the language together. If the term, my point is that if the CUP terminates, then this development agreement would terminate. So in other words, say a new applicant in 20, 30 years comes in and says they want to do some other use, then this agreement would terminate with the CUP because the CUP would be replaced with a new development. That's the only, it's nothing, and I'm not suggesting those are the only words you can use, but my point is that we should, to the point raised by council members, make sure that the development agreement is going along with the conditional use permit.
So what I hear you saying is that if the conditional use permit were to be revoked or changed at some point in the future, that the development agreement would be tied to it that way. But we're not saying that the development agreement is well, we're saying the development agreement is dependent on the CUP, but not the other way around.
Yeah, we're saying that the two are linked together. For instance, if there were to be a breach of the development agreement, then you wouldn't have the conditional use permit either. So we're simply saying that they're coterminous, they are linked together. And I'm happy to suggest the language would be in 26.3.
Yes.
And I would just simply say the term of this agreement shall be for the term of the CUP. And that might be an easier way to write it as opposed to trying to interject the word coterminous, but say the term of this agreement shall run and be concurrent with the CUP. And you can leave a blank for depending on whether the CUP is actually approved. But I would put in the blank CUP, conditional use permit, hashtag 2020-01.
Yeah. Questions by the council regarding that type of a language and what that is accomplishing?
Are there other questions for McKay while he's at the podium?
I won't be far away if there are.
Okay. Okay, so for clarification purposes, if this were to proceed tonight, how do we make a motion?
You amend paragraph 26.3 in your motion to read as it was stated.
Yep.
Okay, I have some questions or some thoughts on number 4, the boundary resolution, the very last paragraph. Starting on page 2 and going over to page 3, it's talking about the disputed property. And if it does not fall within the municipal limits of the city and construction of the development cannot commence as contemplated and shown in this agreement, the city expressly permits owner and its successors and assigns to redesign the development. Any such redesign shall comply with city code as it existed at the time of the owner's vested rights in all respects, less and accepting for any and all exceptions to the city code granted in this agreement. So if I'm reading that right, it's saying that if we can't get this disputed land between us and Weber County figured out, that you are able to redesign your plan based on the code at the time of.
Yeah, and still with these limitations in the development. The thought there is we probably put the green space, open area and the undisputed in that 4 acres. Just it would lay out better, and that would be kind of the area where it go down to the river and maybe put some other.
So if you can't figure out this boundary exception, your redesign is not putting stalls, not putting sites in those areas. It would just be open space areas. I see, okay.
And Kay, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know does it even apply anymore to you? Because you're gonna proceed even with your current design, correct?
Probably, and we just wouldn't build there.
And they won't build there.
But I just didn't want to be locked into that box in case we did need to redesign.
So if you don't have those 4 acres, do you need to redesign the project as far as how many sites per acre you can have? Or are you still within the range there?
Yeah, we'd still be well within range. We wouldn't exceed that.
Okay.
Would you need to bring it back to us if you were design, or this would be giving you permission to just go redesign it?
No, it would still require all the design approvals that we've gone through. What it's simply acknowledging something that is already there, but we wanted to put in writing, is that the other aspects of the agreement that have been discussed and worked on over this period of months, if not years, that those would still apply, even in a redesign. So all the city code and everything that applies still applies. But we're just simply acknowledging that there may be a need to redesign, and those things that are tied to this design, as far as the negotiations and the conversations and all of the code and all of that all still applies. So that's really all it's identifying. So that wouldn't be the case whether it's stated or not, but we're stating it just to make it clear and documented.
Okay, number 7, a stream alteration permit from the state is required for any qualifying activity along the Weaver River. Can you expand on that? What is qualifying activities, like being from your customers, from people who are staying in the park, or what does that mean exactly?
That was required for engineering, and I did apply for it and got it. I think some of it had to do with the 2 elements on my application for that. One was tying into the UDOT drainage that also drains that way, as well as having the public trail right on that riverbank was included in that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. On the transportation utility fee, we have, if a guest stays 30 days or more, it's considered a long-term stay, and a short-term stay is 29 consecutive days or less. I know typically we wouldn't be asking businesses how they're going to keep track of that, but where that is determined on the TUF fee, how are you going to get that information back to us? How is that going to be reported?
Yeah, our software handles all that. I mean, it tells us who's there, how long they've been there when they came in. It would just be a simple formula of, the way we structured it was, let's pick a day of the month, the 5th. However many people have stayed less than 29 or less than 30 days, we're going to call short-term stay for the billing. Anybody that had been there longer than that, they'd be considered a long-term. And then every month, we would look at it, just to give a fair picture.
Okay.
So, sorry.
No, go
A
ahead.
follow-up question on that. I had a similar question. So somebody stayed 15 days prior to the 5th. They stay 20 days and then leave. So they've exceeded the 29 days, but you haven't recorded them yet on the next month's 5th. Are they going to be considered short-term because they were only 20 days after the 5th instead of a full 35 days or something longer? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Can you say it one more time?
So I'm saying if somebody is doing a more than 30-day stay, but they straddle it over the 5th of the month, you're recording somebody at the 5th, oh, they've only been here 20 days, so they haven't been 29 days yet. The next 5th of the month, they stayed another 20 days, so they stayed 40 days total. It should be a long term, but they've only been there 20 days since the 5th. Are they going to be noted as a long term or short term?
I think for that month's calculation, it would be so much easier and probably not very material to count them as a short term because they've really only been there 15 days or whatever it was, 20 days, and then the next month would come and they would be considered then a long-term person.
Right, that's what I'm asking is, obviously you don't project to the future if they're thinking to stay 40 and they don't.
Yeah.
But if they did stay 40, I just want to make sure you don't truncate off of the last fifth of the month.
It would be cumulative.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify that, I think the concern is that maybe they've left, right? They had 20 days before the 5th, they're there for a certain period of time, 20 more days, but now they're not there anymore. So that snapshot in time on the 5th, we want to make sure that we capture anybody that became long-term stay throughout the month, rather than just how many are there on this one specific day, because there's a chance to lose people in that. So I think that's the concern. Well, the discretion is, as was brought up in public comment, is simply, we had dialogue back and forth about limiting the number of long-term stays and capping it at a certain number so that the transportation utility fee could be established and calculated. And ultimately, we determined that they get to have people stay however long they stay, and then they will report each month, and we will calculate the utility fee based on the actual, rather than our initial conversations was we would establish a cap and we would project that over a year's period of time. There was a thought that from a staff perspective, it would be very difficult to make it real time, to have it calculate every month. We figured out a methodology for that so that it's more accurate and more precise, and they have a little bit more flexibility on not having a hard cap. That's really what that was.
And the other side, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that it does default at long-term stays. So if for some reason their staff does not report to the city, it's all long-term stays for the city's purpose.
And the other side of that is the public and I and everybody else wanted to encourage as much short-term stay as possible. We still get the transient tax from that, and it gives them incentive to make it short-term stay.
Yeah, it's cheaper for us. I mean, our whole business model is we make more money on the short-termers. This is just another reason, I think, to take in as many short-termers. We pay less in expense for that guest. We collect more in tax, more revenue for us. I mean, I feel like it's very well aligned.
Okay, so sorry, I'm going back to Quinn's situation here. So you have somebody that comes in on the 15th of May, and they, on June 5th, they're there now for 20 days. So you would report that to us as a short term, and then they stay until the 15th of June. So on your report to us, they would only have been there for 10 days, but in reality, they'd been there for 45 days, right? 35 days. So I'm still kind of confused as to why you would report it short term and then see, oh, the next month it's long term. Do you make adjustments for the time that it was long term, or?
It would just be so like the when they came in after that first 15 days that they were there, we would be paying the short-term tough fee for them. Then let's say they're there another however many days, 20 more days, gets them to 40. The next month, so the June bill, we would report that's a long-term person. And so, I mean, like I say, they could up and leave anytime. I don't know. I mean, we had to pick a way to do it. I don't know if any way is completely perfect with
McKay,
limited amount of resources.
It sounds like this is dependent on the software a little bit, but my understanding during this conversation was that as soon as somebody kicks over from being there 29 days to now being a long-term stay, that will show up on the report. This month, we had somebody stay longer than that. So whether they're there in the park on the 5th or they're not in the park on the 5th, the report captures as soon as, because all of their reporting is based on whether they're a short-term or long-term. The transient room tax is applied versus it doesn't apply. There's all types of things, and their rate structure changes on that day, all of these elements. And so in the report, it's not just what's happening on the 5th, it's what's happening this last 30 days and how many times did people roll over into the long-term stay category. So it's just calculated on the 5th, or the report is run on the 5th, but it's for the entire period. It's not just the one-day report. It's the monthly report. Is that accurate? What I'm
In-
saying
in
is it
my
will
mind,
capture all of the time somebody rolls into a long-term stay, even if they're not in the park on the 5th anymore.
So if somebody on the 4th, the previous month, they were billed as a short-term stay guest. Then on the 4th, on the 3rd, they became a long-term stay, but then left on the 4th. We run the report as of the 5th. Did they get caught up to being a long-term guest?
Yes.
I think we can do it that way.
I think we need to do
I
it
just
that
have,
way.
Pick a point in time. Whoever's short-term, pay that fee, whoever's long-term. We need to make it efficient for staff to do it, so it makes sense. I mean, it'll be,
Yeah.
I think it's,
To me, this is more of a reporting conversation. I think the agreement handles the structure, but it's more of a software conversation that we need to make sure the report is running the right way, that we're capturing all of those details.
So for me, just a clarification, so I understand what's meant. I just want to make sure what's written captures what is meant, because it says the determinant of long-term stay versus short-term stay shall be determined based upon actual occupancy of the development on the 5th day of each month. So if you had 10 sites that had 20 people churn through on the 5th of the month, are we capturing everybody who's in those 10 sites, or only using those 10 sites on the 5th of the month?
if they're in the park, it'll count whether they're in this space or that space.
Right, but they've been there and they've left. They've been, and another group's been there and left. We don't get anything for them.
You get the transient tax for the short-term rentals. That's their obligation to pay to the state. That has nothing to do with long-term rentals. The TUF
is only for
the TUF is
long-term.
only for long-term stays. I think we're getting a little confused on that. They have to be there more than 30 days. So if they haven't been there more than 30 days on the 5th, or 29 days, they won't be considered long-term stays.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to clarify one point. There is a transportation utility fee that applies to short-term stays.
Yeah.
It's not only
That's what I
long-term
was gonna
stays. If you
say.
look at the calculation, there's a rate for short-term stays and a rate for long-term stays.
So it does matter if it's short-term or long-term, more than just taxes.
And I apologize, Quentin, you're correct.
That's okay. I'm still trying to figure out.
So then they wouldn't get counted then if you don't pick them up.
Well, what if the 5th of the day, the 5th of each month was just, I guess, trying to establish some order to it. But I suppose you could change the 5th to just say on a monthly basis.
Well,
I
I
mean,
don't
if
care
it's
if it's if it's a reporting day, not on occupancy on the 5th.
Right.
That he said
Reporting
we're
day.
occupied on.
Right. The intent is certainly just to report all stays, long-term,
Right.
short-term, over
We
the
just need to
monthly
make sure our
basis.
wording captures the intent.
Sure.
I think right now it could be construed only those in the park on that day.
So would you suggest changing the language there then?
Well, because it says snapshot, you don't want to take snapshot.
Wait, where does it say snapshot?
In the middle of the paragraph.
13.2, right in the middle of the paragraph.
for the preceding
Okay.
measurement.
Measured monthly by sending monthly report.
Just it's measured on a monthly basis?
Yeah.
30-day report.
Yeah, I would just say reported rather than occupied on the 5th day of the month. They need to capture all the occupancy throughout the month.
Sorry.
You break it, you pay for it.
You break it, you gotta take it home and use it all day.
It's already very tight anyway.
So Brandon.
No, you're fine. You don't have
Do you remember from your calculation, if somebody for a certain month is short-term, what that space pays versus somebody, if there's a long-term that month, what that is? I mean, is it,
Well, it's per ERU and it's $15 per ERU.
so it's roughly 0.3 times the ERU versus 0.6. So it's, we're talking a difference of like $7 if we get somebody wrong one month.
It's not wrong.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, our thought was month end, it's always a busy time for us. Give us a few days, take a snapshot of the park, see how many long terms are in there, here manage so many short terms. here's the billing rate. And there will be some folks that are still in that short term that end up being long term, and they just get caught up. They pay, you know, it's a couple.
You just pay the extra,
They pay.
that double charge.
So, we can do it however you like. I hate to push this whole approval just formula. I think we'll do it however. This is just kind of how it seems kind of fair and.
Because so when you say that on short-term rentals, the short-term stays, but it's a set number of VRUs, correct?
Right, the total, the highest number of ERUs that could be calculated is 69. So it can never be higher than that. So you could have multiple people that were short-term stays in a certain site, and that would just be count as one short-term stay. It doesn't add up. It's not like if they have a whole bunch of short-term stays, you just add up more and more and more ERUs.
That's what I was trying to get at by my earlier statement. Those are fixed, that's almost a fixed number. The transient tax is something totally different. But if we're taking that 69 and dividing it up basically short-term versus long-term.
Yeah, it's just a percent. So the most is 69. It could be less than that if they have a whole bunch of short-term stays.
Okay, so what you're saying earlier, Blair, is correct. Each site is dealt with as a site, but we have a transient tax for all the multiples within that month.
Yeah, yes. We're not worried about the transient tax. This paragraph or section is only dealing with how to get a percent of that 69 for it to be less.
If I remember right, as ballpark, if everybody was a short-term guest, I think the total fee was about $650. Everybody was in there. If everybody is a long-term guest, I think the total was like $1,000.
Yeah.
So fluctuating back in there each month. I mean, if it's a person or two, I mean, it's a difference of like $7 a person. But I feel like it's all going to even out anyway. So however you guys want to do it's fine. I just don't want to delay it. Just for you know, how we calculate it, I think we can be amenable to a different way if you'd like.
Can we say it something like, it shall be the owner's responsibility to report the number of short-term and long-term stays to the city for the preceding measured month by sending a report showing how many sites were occupied short-term stay versus long-term stay or something like that. But we need to put a date, what day they will submit it to us. Because we're saying they need to submit it on they're going to do a snapshot on the 5th, but they need to submit it to us by what day, right?
Well, I don't know if you want to put that in here because that's more of an administrative thing, and I don't know when they run their utility bills, and that
Okay.
feels like something we can just work out with them on when we need it by.
Okay, how does everybody feel up to that point though?
I think it could just state that it needs to be a monthly report.
By sending a monthly report showing how many sites were occupied long-term stay versus short-term stay.
Yep.
Does that sound okay?
Okay.
And so, again, to define who is a long-term stay, then is it if they have a cumulative of 29 days?
Anything above 29 days.
Yeah, just how many sites of the 102 sites, how many had an occupant in it that was a long-term stay?
As of the end of a month? Like when do you?
Ever throughout that month. Ever throughout that month, so. Yeah.
So if any guest had stayed 30 days at any point in that month, they're considered a long-term guest.
Yes. Because the prior month, they would have been, like to your point, a short-term guest, but then now in this month, they're long-term. But it's based on the sites.
But you would have had to pay a test for them smaller amount the first time, longer amount the second time, because now they're staying longer than the short-term stay. Right? I'm following that?
Or is it that they are a long-term, so they paid a portion of that the first month, and then they only pay up to a long-term the second month?
It's per site.
I don't know how you'd calculate that.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
somebody
it's just
could
getting all
leave.
confusing.
Yeah, somebody could leave partway through. They may anticipate being a
Right.
long-term stay and
And
then.
that may be why they said you pick a day and you just base off that.
I mean, we want it to be efficient on our side where we can just pull a
Right.
standard report, say here it is. Where if it's
And
adding up and matching additional stuff, it's going to be burdensome.
Right.
If it's material, I'm happy to err in your favor on those things.
Well, I agree with the comment earlier that, you know, you need to have a specific day to shoot for, because there's verbiage in here saying if you don't give it to us, then you're charged the full amount.
Yeah.
So we need to identify a day.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I stirred up what didn't need to stir up. Maybe it makes sense what's there.
I'm just a dumb engineer, but in my mind, they come in, you put a date on when they come in, and the clock rolls. They're a short-term stay until the first 29 or whatever the mark is, and then at day 30, they're long-term. The clock keeps running. Whenever you report it, doesn't matter. So if they're staying 60 days, well, the first 29, and you report it on the 5th, that's a short-term. After that's a long-term.
Which I think this.
Yeah, it does. It's very simple. Just put a date on your program when they come in and let the clock roll until they leave. Done. It's not arbitrary.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the idea in my mind is that the report should show over the last 30 days, how many times somebody kicked that clock over to day 30. Once somebody's there 30 days, then now they're considered a long-term stay for that monthly report.
Bingo.
So,
Everyone's a short-term stay when they first move in there.
Exactly.
Regardless of when you make the reports. After they hit that day 30, it's long-term. Some may not. So I don't think it's a big deal.
Did you have other questions?
yeah, so this line on 13.2, the owner in its sole and absolute discretion may adjust the number of long-term sites up or down at any time. That to me is just confusing the whole thing even further. Can you help me understand why you would want, or how would that be beneficial to the city when we have this calculation, when it's always changing?
I think what that's just trying to preserve is the tough fees will change, and they're changed based on our reports. I think that language might have been left in a little bit from how we had it structured before, but I think
It was.
it's kind of,
I think it
I
comes.
don't think it hurts anything.
It comes because it started as there was no discretion. It was, we are saying you have X number of long-term stays. You cannot rent out any more than that. And the reason we were doing that is because it was part of the tough calculation. And the idea was that we would establish a tough fee that would last for a year or indefinitely, right? We were trying to say, how much is your monthly tough fee? For everybody else, it's just a $1 amount that doesn't ever change. And so the mindset was, let's fix a tough fee and have it be an amount that just continues. And then maybe revisit it each year. Because there wasn't this concept of, well, let's look at it every month and let's make it an actual fee based on what's happening in the park each month. Once we realized that there was an ability to do it as an actual, just like we do water fees, just like we do any of those things, there's a meter that tells you this is how much was used last month. So there's a fee that's calculated based on that. It's a similar concept that we're calculating the ERUs based on what were the actual usage in the park if they were short or long.
The point with this paragraph that I'm hearing, I'm just going to jump into this fray, is you got some arbitrary language in the first sentence, but then you got some very specific direction in the second and third sentence. To me, it'd be very easy just to eliminate the arbitrary language, say the owner, delete in its sole absolute discretion, to say the owner may adjust the number of long-term stays up or down, period. It should be the owner's responsibility to report the number to the city for proceeding measured monthly by sending a snapshot report. So you get your actuals. Then you get all the arbitrary language out of there.
I'm fine with those edits.
No.
McKay?
You're a
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
So just so I understand, at one point, 1 month, you can have all 102 sites be long-term, and then 2 months later, you can have all 102 be short-term or short-term and long-term or whatever. Okay. Are you going to be doing a reservation system, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
So a lot of this, you should kind of have an idea of how long people will be staying up front. Okay. I have more. The landscaping, as far as the buffer that is on the south side with 84, I think we need to add that we need to have continual upkeep maintained. You put the landscaping in, but it will be maintained as time goes on. Sorry, that's number 17.
I almost think that goes without saying.
Well, yeah, we'll comply with the city ordinances in that regard. I mean, that's how we usually handle that.
I mean, they would be subject to code enforcement, I would suppose.
Okay. I think
you've been rather pensive about this.
I'm just confounded a little bit. What about, actually, let me think on this for a sec. Somebody else can ask questions for a minute.
Does anyone else have comments? Okay, Liz looking.
I appreciate all the council's feedback on this. We, as a committee, have met with McKay and his partners and several times, and I feel like we have gone over this in depth. And so these little things we've tweaked a little bit. I appreciate everybody's input on it, because sometimes after you look at it, enough times you forget those little things. So I appreciate that.
So maybe I have one question, comment. I know there are a lot of written requests early on and throughout this whole discussion and planning and write-up about City of Uint officials meeting with South Weaver officials. We should probably clarify or explain that that did take place, and there has been discussions. I don't know if you want to talk about that further, just so people know we have been in discussions with the City of Uint on this.
What's that agenda item number?
As,
The boundary.
14.
Yeah, I mean, just to acknowledge that it has been done and
Yeah.
Uint understands. We agreed to meet with the citizens. Most of them don't like it. All. I live very close to it as well.
The only other thought I had in the development agreement is possibly, is there some sort of easement for the access road that will make sure that it keeps it open and available at all times? I didn't see anything in there about that.
Didn't we talk about it actually being gated
Yeah,
with a
there'll
breakaway
be-
lock?
Yeah,
It
there'll be-
actually, so that people can't come in from that.
Yeah, we don't want the trail users to think that's the entrance, or that's the trail to come in, so there will be like a breakaway style fence or some barrier with a sign, emergency access only type thing.
Do we need to have that in writing?
If you like, I think that's the plan. I think the fire department will grant occupancy if it's come to their satisfaction. And the city
I don't know that we
saying-
cared if they had a fence there or not.
Yeah,
It was,
doesn't
that
that,
was more of the parks.
Yeah.
doesn't that show up in the plans? And so they'd have to build according to the plans.
Okay.
I think the breakaway gate is talked about in the plan.
Show something there.
Brandon will double check. He'll look at those right now.
Okay, and then as far as if you sell it, you're all grandfathered in, because it all stays with the property. That, I gotta look at what number that is. Sorry.
26.4.
Yeah, 26.
Haley, it's 26.4.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear you. So if it's sold and everything, does the agreement go with the new owner, I guess is what I'm asking.
Does it run with the land? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, so any new owner of the land would have to abide by the same rule.
Abide by the same agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, sorry.
Do you have any?
Sorry, that's all my questions.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought I was waiting for you. Okay, any further comments or questions? Then I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-03.
Mayor, I'm gonna make a motion. We approve resolution 2020-03, development agreement for Riverside RV Resort with the following changes. In paragraph 13.2, delete in its sole and absolute discretion and indicate that it will be a monthly report for the short-term versus long-term stays. And paragraph 26.3, the terminology that it will run coterminous with the conditional use permit.
Did we decide not to do coterminous? Okay.
Terminus with the
Yeah,
with the language that Wade had suggested.
Do you have that written down? Is that language?
Yeah, I've got it.
Yes.
Okay.
It said, terminus agreement shall run and be coterminous with the conditional use permit.
I think we took out the word
Oh,
coterminous,
we
so it
did.
just
Yeah,
simply
we did.
run with the conditional use permit.
Or concurrent, excuse me.
Concurrent, that's the right word.
So paragraph 26.3, it would run concurrent with the conditional use permit.
Run and be concurrent with. That's what I had written down.
Okay,
I'm feeling like that was it.
all right. Do I have a second for that, Councilwoman Petty's motion?
I'll second
Hey, Councilwoman Soderquist, is there further comment or question?
Yeah, clarification on the motion. Paragraph 13.2, would you also consider deleting the words "at any time" to that first sentence? So it should read, the owner may
The owner
adjust the
agrees.
number of long-term stays up or down, period.
Sorry, we said that again. Agree with you.
And your attorney agreed with that.
And Angie, do you agree?
I agree. So paragraph 13.2 should state the owner deletes in its sole and absolute discretion. Continue, should say, may adjust the number of long-term stays up or down, period, to delete at any time.
Thank you. And the second comment would be on paragraph 26.3. I believe the attorney suggested there should be a number after the CUP identifying this being the first CUP or something along that line.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
Run and be concurrent with conditional use permit, parentheses, and the number.
2020-01 or whatever.
2020-01,
that
I
might
believe
be,
it is.
Correct.
A second for those changes.
Okay, we're in agreement for first and second motion. Any further comment? And we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Windsor.
Aye.
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 No.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, okay, item number 9 is the final site and improvement plans of the Riverside RV Resort. Those are contained in your packets. So do we have any comments or questions from the council on those?
Okay, on the parking, on the pull-through, is the parking just in the pull-through, or where's the parking spot? Is it that little square there, or
No, that little square is like a picnic patio area.
both of those square rectangles, the big one and the small one?
The little small one's actually the location where the utilities will be.
Okay,
And that just kind of is a placeholder for that. And then the larger rectangle is a like a just little patio area.
okay,
But the parking and the pull-throughs, they're made to be long enough where the car and the RV can fit.
okay,
And then around the perimeter, you'll see the parking for the RVs are actually the side stalls. Those are typically shorter stalls.
okay. So when I added this up and checked the parking stalls, I feel like it was underneath the code. Does anybody know if it's within code for how many parking spots there are? It's been a while since I added that up. I meant to do that before I came.
Parking stalls was specifically looked
To the
at and
code.
reviewed.
Yeah, okay.
Other comments or questions on the plans?
And then on the fence and the cable barrier, is that gonna be all on the existing fence line that's there currently, or are you moving that back?
Yeah, we'll put the cable fence just right on the boundary line, which I think is where our
That
fence
fence
already
is.
is.
Mhm.
And then right inside that, we'll put a kind of that masonry style.
Okay.
fence.
Okay. Other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the final site and improvement plans for the RV resort? Thank you, Councilman Soderquist. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Windsor. Is it further comment? And we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Windsor.
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries unanimously. Item number 10, conditional use permit 2020-01 for the Riverside RV Resort. The CUP places the following conditions on the Riverside Resort. 24-hour on-site management shall be provided. Quiet hours shall be from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. RV park rules must be posted on-site and given to all patrons, and those are contained in your packet. Management must enforce park rules. Any changes to park rules shall be provided to the city within 1 week. City staff shall have the right to inspect and enforce conditions. Any non-compliance will be subject to standard code compliance processes and actions. Any requests for changes to this permit must be made in writing and approved by the city council. Are there questions or comments on the CUP?
Yeah, I got a question. So if they're fined out of compliance with their rules, what fallback does the city have? Do we have to revoke the CUP and go through that hearing, or what's to keep them to follow the rules at all times and not?
So what this states is that we'd go through code enforcement processes, our standard code enforcement processes, and there are warnings and strikes and various processes that are included, just like any other property that is out of compliance with code.
Okay.
So that's what it's identifying, that it would go through those processes. But ultimately, yes, if it's egregious as a one-time or a series of non-compliance, then ultimately revocation, that's a possibility.
Well,
You bet.
I understand the public has lost some trust in us that don't want this, and their concern is this is going to run amok, and they're going to say, "You told you so." looking to fail rather than succeed. We all hope it succeeds in regard to be a very positive public opportunity here. But how do we control that so that the quality of life of those on Conway Drive is not damaged that they think it might be? How do we get the assurance here? How does the public get the assurance that these things will be adhered to and acknowledged and lived by? Where's the hammer? I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, the idea is that we have processes in place. The question is, are we administering the processes properly, is how I hear that question asked. And ultimately, that's on staff. That's on me as the city manager and having a code enforcement officer that reports to me to make sure that this is a priority to watch.
Okay, thank you.
My question would just be, we received an updated version of this, and the only difference I could find was number 4 and 5 were combined. Is that correct?
And the note was adjusted. The wording in the note was amended slightly.
Okay.
Before it made reference to any non-compliance would lead to revocation essentially, and
oh, I see it.
We basically stated in here that any non-compliance would be subject to our code enforcement, our standard practices. So
like what you just talked about.
It implied that, for example, one of these is RV park rules must be posted on site and given to all patrons. If the on-site manager fails to hand the piece of paper to one of the patrons, are we going to go and revoke the entire permit and shut down a business for that type? The note indicated that was the possibility, and so we wanted to clarify that the crime would need to, or the punishment would need to match the crime.
And legally, you can't say that.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
I just echo what Wayne said. We are, of the opposition to this, and we hope that it turns out to be something that is a benefit to all.
I definitely hear and feel. I've heard many, many concerns. I'm very aware that it will be very well run, clean park to be proud of. It'll be a great park.
All right. Then I have a motion to approve conditional use permit 2020-01 Riverside RV Resort.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Councilman Windsor, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Soderquist, thank you. Are there any further comments or questions?
I have a comment I'd like to make. I wrote down a lot of this. I'm just going to read it so I make sure I get everything, but I feel like this is a really tough spot to be in today. I was not on the council for a lot of these changes and choices, but I am now. And I don't know if there's many people who have been more dedicated to this development than me. I have walked this property. I have seen firsthand the concerns that people have. I have personally met and spoken with the residents that live by it. I have listened to every past meeting that we have had and learned about how things were changed and the votes that took place and what got us here today. I think I probably spent 15 hours doing a deep study of our code and finding things that still needed to be addressed. In fact, many of those changes we see here today are due to those findings. Okay, I really do appreciate the concessions that you've made, but I still feel like we are getting less of an RV park and more of a mobile home park on wheels. I do believe that you have the intention of making this a beautiful park, which is why I just approved the site plan. It is a beautiful park. But I do worry that if it gets sold, that they do not have the same enthusiasm for a nice place, and yet they still have all the allowances. We've had too many additions in the city that make big promises but underdeliver. Once everything is said and done, it is our citizens who must pay the price for the nuisance that the city now does not address at the time they are catering instead to a developer or owner. We seem to have a habit of mandating the code be followed completely when it is in favor of the developer, and yet make recessions when it is in favor of the city. I do not feel that the owner changing long-term and short-term stays is okay. I worry about a change in ownership. This agreement that we're making is with you, McKay, and we are basing that off of your dedication and your diligence and your good favor and good faith in you. We are not guaranteed the same philosophy with the new owner. Additionally, once again, we do not have teeth in the CUP. It's a lose-lose situation. Us revoking your license does not do us any favors. Now we have the abandoned RV park that is doing nothing for us. I refuse to put our citizens through another CUP we cannot actually do anything with. It's hard to know when we're being served platitudes. There's just simply far too many concerns for me, and far too many concerns with our citizens that I don't feel have been properly addressed this time.
Okay. Any other comment? And you have, we did have a motion and a second, and we had comment. And so we will now have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
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 And the motion carries 4-1. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, McKay.
No, thank you very much. We will be great neighbors. Our real estate, I mean, this is going to be a very long-term hold for us. It's not something we're just going to flip and sell to the next person. We take pride in it. We love the spot. I mean, it's so beautiful. I do think there are a lot of great economic incentives for the city for this park as well, on a piece of ground that otherwise really no other use is possible. So
I would absolutely love for you to prove me wrong, so thank you for that.
I hear your concerns. Seriously, be good citizens and neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thanks, McKay.
Thanks, McKay. All right, item number 11, resolution 2020-24, 2020 streetlight installation project. On May 28, 2020 at 2 p.m., bids were opened for the 2020 streetlight installation project. 5 bids were received. The results of the bidding are shown in your package. Staff checked the bids and found a few minor errors. However, these errors did not change the ranking of the bids. The project entails installation of new city purchased streetlights in subdivisions where developers have previously paid for them. There will be 18 residential and 21 intersection style streetlights installed. Staff has reviewed all bids and recommends that the council award the project to Big Bear Electric with their bid of $183,980. This recommendation is based upon the contractor's experience in doing similar work, as well as a favorable recommendation from our streetlight supplier, Carson Fillon, SSCO. Carson has been involved in several other projects with Big Bear Electric and highly recommends them. Are there comments or questions on this?
I have one, and it goes for this and the next one. We heard it in the public comment portion. There's not a lot of details, just a summary on this, but were there differences in timing to complete and or warranty of work between all these?
No, the bid established that the completion date is October 31st. So they all have to comply with that.
Okay.
And
then warranty of work?
Right, lasts for.
Is all in the write-up?
Yes, it's all in the bid. So they all have to comply with that.
Okay.
Any questions?
Out of curiosity, do you know where these streetlights are going? Which specific neighborhoods yet?
Yes, I have drawings that I did not include in the packet, but
it's mainly the new subdivisions.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes.
I just have some residents who are in new subdivisions wondering if it's them or not.
Yeah, well, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it's all paid for through the fees that we've collected from developers over the past couple of years.
Okay. So anything that's a couple years older or newer
Right.
should be
Yes.
included.
So like Old Maple Farms in Valley Meadows, Ray Creek Estates.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2020-24?
So move.
Second.
Councilman Halverson and Councilman Windsor seconds. Any further comments?
I just have one quick one. I just want to thank the municipalities maybe for working on this. I think this is an awesome thing for our city, and I know it was a lot of work, and I thank staff for all of their work on that too. I'm excited for them. They're very cute.
They are, they're nice looking.
Oh, we want to hit the cute factor, so I appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
And they save us money.
Yes, and it's just smart all the way around. So I really want to applaud everybody who took part in this.
But I was just going for the cute factor, so
That's all Wayne really cares about.
Oh, that's really good.
All right, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 And the motion carries unanimously. Item number 12, fraud risk assessment. The state auditor has issued a new requirement that each local government entity will need to complete an annual fraud risk assessment before the end of each fiscal year, starting with the current fiscal year. The governing board of each entity may assign a board member, staff member, volunteer, or paid professional to complete the assessment on their behalf. However, the chief administrative officer and chief financial officer must certify the assessment. The completed and certified assessment must be presented to the governing board prior to the end of the fiscal year. Tonight's discussion is for the council to assign an individual to complete this assessment. Okay. Comments or questions?
I didn't see any recommendations, so is this
Yeah,
just?
It says right there, finance director.
It's,
It's a, yeah, so, okay, there it is, sorry, I missed
Yeah.
that. Ultimately, this fraud risk assessment is a new state requirement. It's pretty much a yes or no questionnaire of about 30 questions. And so that's why we felt like the finance director would be the proper person to answer the question. Some of the questions are, do you have a policy on this? Do you have a policy on that? It's not an outside entity coming in and looking at our fraud risk. It's more of an internal assessment. However, the state requirement says that the governing board, in this case, the city council, has to appoint the person to do it. And then we will have to fill out that questionnaire and report on what that questionnaire entailed and what our fraud risk assessment evaluation brings back before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, that
Mayor,
would be Mark McCray, by the way.
yeah, this isn't really a motion, is it?
yes,
Yeah,
you got it.
do you want to take that?
Okay, Mayor, I make a motion that we,
Appoint.
appoint our finance director to complete the fraud risk assessment by the end of the fiscal year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Windsor, thank you. Any further comment? We'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Windsor.
Aye.
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 The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 13 is Resolution 2020-25 Legal Services Contract. South Weaver City is in need of a legal advice from a firm with land use expertise. Staff has reached out to firms with known experience in these matters and received offers from 3 different firms: Snow Christensen and Martineau, Parsonsville and Latimer and Jones Waldo. After review of each firm's experience and qualifications, discussions with the individual attorneys who would be working with the city, and an evaluation of the hourly rates of each firm, staff recommends engaging the services of Snow, Christensen, and Martineau. Although all 3 firms have knowledge and experience that would benefit South Weaver City, Snow, Christensen, and Martineau will provide a 3-person team of experienced attorneys at the lowest hourly rate of the 3 firms. Are there comments or questions?
I was just wondering if we could address Paul's comments. I know he's not in here, but why there isn't table rates and experience shown when it's done for other entities in the city, just so it's on the record for him to come back to.
Yeah, that's my fault. I failed to include the other rates as I drafted the summary.
Okay.
The other rates are, Jones Waldo was in the high 200s, I want to say 280, and the Parsonsville Latimer was over 350.
Okay. I do have a question. I forgot to highlight this. somewhere in there, it's mentioned that they would be representing us on specific issues, but nothing else. Does that mean that we won't be able to ask them questions like we did formally, or? I'm trying to find that. I'm sorry, I should have.
The
written it
idea
down.
is that they are not being contracted as an ongoing city attorney.
Okay.
But as project specific, case specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, I feel like we utilize that a lot where we confer with our attorney. Are we going to look into replacing that possibility then?
Yes, that's a separate
Okay,
conversation.
perfect. Thank you.
The one question I have is, are they the only ones that offered 3 people? And if so, if we call on one and he or she pulls other people into it, then are we paying for multiple people? As opposed to if we had one individual, are they still gonna do the same thing? They'll charge us per man hour, not just their time?
Right, so the other firms, Parsonsville, Latimer had 2 people that were involved. One would do 99% of the work, and they had another that might step in if needed, kind of as a backup, but didn't anticipate them to participate too much. Same with, well, a little bit different with Jones Waldo. There was one that would be primary, and then as you described, having a team behind them if they had questions that they would ask some of the others that would charge at those own rates that they didn't provide. So each attorney within the firm has their own hourly rate fee essentially. And so this is the only one that said we would have 3 sets of 3 different people on it throughout the process. And not that they all would spend all the time necessary, right? We're not necessarily paying for 3 attorneys. We'd get a bill for their individual hourly rates when they provide the service. One would be a team lead, and the other 2 would do a lot of some of the research and the legwork and the drafting of documents and things like that. But they're the only one that committed 3 people to handle the case as a team.
Thank you.
Other questions? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2020-25?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-25 for legal service contract.
For
Sorry.
Snow, Christensen,
Yeah,
and
Snow,
Marno?
Christian, and Martin. Christensen and Martin.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further comment? We'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, discussion item, Northern City Boundary. Uinta City recently approached South Weaver City about discussing the 2 cities' common boundary. City Manager David Larson and City Planner Barry Burton and I met with the representatives from Uinta City on May 5th and determined that a joint working group with 4 representatives from each city would get together and develop a joint resolution between both cities that would clarify the boundary and could go before both city councils for consideration. South Weaver City's representatives on the working group are Barry Burton, Councilmember Blair Halverson, and Planning Commission Chair Rob Osborne and I. We met with Uinta City representatives as a working group on May 21st to begin discussions. I reported on those discussions during the May 26th City Council meeting. Tonight's discussion item is a chance for the entire City Council to provide input to the members of the working group as they continue to represent the city in discussions with Uinta City as they prepare a joint resolution to come before the City Council at a future date. All right. Who wants to begin the discussion?
Okay. Well, Mayor, I'd like to begin the discussion. I appreciate you allowing us to have this on the agenda just so we have this out in the open. So the proposed new city boundary line, and in your initial discussion with Uinta, would follow I-84, if you guys can see back here, follow I-84, and then that little, it's like the neon yellow color that comes up, and it would encompass the RV Riverside RV Park and Cottonwood Drive right there. How's that for lead off?
And then,
So
thank you.
The one question
So-
that wasn't brought up is I don't remember the reasoning why it comes back down over there. I believe that's the Cap property.
That's where it
Castle
meets with the
Rock,
bound-
isn't
with the
not.
boundary.
Riverdale already claims it.
Well, I know they claim it, but he's requested that it be in the south. But that's a whole nother issue when it gets down that point. But that jog down there is kind of, I think they're just where you ended it. Am I correct in that, Mayor?
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of discussion had on that end of with
No.
Uinta.
So is that-
Because it's Riverdale.
Is that light
Yeah,
blue line, the
right.
county line,
And so
or is that just some kind of line?
I only bring that up because I know there's been citizen interaction requesting that possibly
Yes.
we address those properties as well.
Well, and that's what Barry Burton would like to do with the surveyors of both counties.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, this started with Uinta approaching us and saying, there's one piece of property we want to talk about. We said, let's talk about the boundary across our entire shared border. But there's also issues on our northern boundary on this western side that are not associated with Uinta City at all. But it's a chance to address that all in one kind of larger conversation with the county.
I was just asked by someone why it didn't cover his property, so that's it.
Can I just say, it might be something that we want to approach Riverdale and carry a similar thing with them so that we can resolve everything.
We talked about it, so. Sorry.
But I don't think, we haven't approached Riverdale yet.
So really, this is just a,
Concept.
right, and the ideology, is that right? Ideology behind it is that if we were to continue with our current border, close to where it says 84 right there, where it's in the middle of the river, it would be difficult for us to service any potential development right there. And this would make it much easier for Uinta to service that. The same idea or ideology would carry out through the Riverside RV Park, that it would be easier for us to maintain versus Uinta. Am I correct?
Yeah, typically city boundaries and annexation discussions, although this is not a true annexation process, it's similar vein of city boundaries are usually based on municipal services. Which city can better provide municipal services, meaning water, sewer, storm drain, garbage, sanitation, all of those types of city services. And so that was much of the driving force behind this discussion, is that one of the reasons it was on the north side of 84, again, was a city service discussion, mostly based on emergency services and how those calls coming into dispatch would best be routed. And so that's why, rather than be in the middle of 84, it was picked to be on one of those sides. Again, service is really the driving force here.
Okay, so with that logic, where the river crosses 84, you have land that's now on the north side of the river, but falls within the proposed South Weber City new boundary. Can we service those areas, or are we not looking to service that at all? So right there, you're adjusting the city boundary northward, where right now it follows the river. So same question.
You're talking on Cottonwood Drive?
No, I'm on the east end, right there where she's pointing out, right by the intersection, that big pit on the east side of 89 would now be proposed to be within South Weber City. If somebody wanted to develop that, how would we service that? How would anybody service it for that question? But
Right. I wasn't privy to the discussion between Uinta and what that working group came up with on that side.
I think both cities had the same problem with that in the individual piece. And so it was not, the serviceability of that piece, I don't think was discussed. The other pieces, as you come west, a lot of them are owned by Weber Pathways. So we know what most of that's going to do. And then as you keep coming down west to the people that cross it, they've come and spoke to us. They had desires to stay in Uinta. I mean, some of those have come and spoke here. So this was a quickly agreed upon. Uinta was all in favor of this, whether it's the right thing, Wayne. I think it's the right way to look at it. Is there a piece we're missing that we can only service? I think the freeway creates a barrier for us to service anything past Cottonwood, the RV park though. And I know the counties were saying, just go down the highway all the way and call it good, but, you know, like, there's more to consider there.
So the question will be asked, could Uinta City provide services for the RV park in Cottonwood Drive? Because people are going to ask that.
I think they could. I don't know if they have the desire to. but
I asked the
think they
question
could.
specifically, and they said no. Not that they could service or not,
To the mayor.
to the mayor
And to. the
and
council
whoever,
members.
yeah, I don't remember. who was
So
on.
they personally did not want it in the cities, but,
No.
but technically they could service it if needed. I'm asking
don't-
because
I
I know
don't
that's
know.
going to be a question.
Well,
It would-
I do
it-
not
it-
want to
it's with
speak
our
for you in the
infrastructure.
city's service capability,
Fair
but
enough.
I would assume that they could based on proximity to some of their other services. Knowing that there's a water line that we're having jointly,
Right.
they would be able to provide water service. Other services,
Yeah,
I would assume, but that's really a question for them to answer.
yeah, I think that they would have to answer that for sure.
And we'll have further discussion as we bring back a proposal. As well.
From a process standpoint, what will happen is, the idea is this working group would come together. They had the initial conversation, they put a line on a map. We're having the discussion as a full council to say, is there anything else that we want to talk about or are we missing? They will eventually, this working group will, I think they tasked our city planner, Barry Burton, to work with the counties to come up with the actual meets and bounds descriptions. I know as specifically was discussed on the section with the river, Cottonwood Drive section, to not tie it to the river, but actually put description in place, a meets and bounds description. So if the river moves, then it's no longer tied to the boundary. It's just simply a meets and bounds description. So that's one piece that hasn't come up yet. Ultimately, the idea was that based on the work of this joint committee, a joint resolution that would declare the boundary would come before both councils for consideration. I don't know if Uinta City is having this kind of intermediate presentation on their side of having the work of the working group come before the full council, but for us, we're getting the entire council involved to talk through this boundary discussion so that the working group can then have direction from the full council. But ultimately, the full council will decide whatever the working group brings forward, then the full council will consider.
So, just a question off the top of my head, or maybe an idea, where Uinta can service the RV park, but would prefer not to. Is it possible to work in some kind of agreement with Cottonwood Drive, where that is a road that's heavily trafficked by Uinta? It's on our priority list, but it's not on our minds. Where we can work together on this, where if they don't want the boundary, we'll go ahead and make the adjustment, but some sort of agreement where we have shared funds for that road and taking care of it. Is that possible? Is that?
My feeling is that's a separate related discussion, right? It's definitely something that needs to be discussed.
Could it be, I guess, could it be seen as a compromise? Okay, you don't want this park, we'll take it, but compromise with us on this road.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, that road it's really silly to have that road be in South Weaver. And it costs a lot and we don't use it, but we do need to maintain it. So it's their prime road.
Yeah,
I think it would be a compromise worth looking into, is my thoughts. Yep.
I think that should be a point of discussion of the working group too. Yeah.
And we have had conversations in the past with Uinta City. I'm sure we will again on that.
It feels like this is a chance to reevaluate that conversation. I know it has happened in the past, not while I've been here, but I know that has taken place in the past, but I don't want to use the word leverage, but it feels like there's opportunity to have discussion around that again.
All right, are there other comments?
I have just two quick ones. One, You were talking about identifying the boundaries not in the middle of the river. If we have a major flood and it shoots the river right down 84, and then we can't get on the other side of the river, I think there's a reason why natural features are identified for boundaries. So I would just recommend, before you go to all the trouble to identify some squiggly current existence of the river, you think that through, because you may identify something that sometime from now we can't access that because we have to jump a river. My second comment is, can you talk to me the authority and or decision making if Uinta City and South Weaver City both agree to some change and the counties don't agree, as is history in the past South Weaver? Who rules? Can the city still make the agreement that crosses county lines, and would we do that?
You bring up a very important point that needs to be stated, and that is the city boundary does not have to follow the county boundary. And so what has been indicated so far from at least Weber County is that they would follow the direction of the city, that they would try to align the boundary. Their process is different than our joint process with Uinta, changing county boundaries. But what has been indicated, at least by one commissioner from Weber County, is that they would support the city's decision and align the county boundary along with that. That they don't have any desire to do something different than what the local jurisdictions feel is appropriate. Not to say that that is a guarantee, but that was the indication, at least by one of the 6 county commissioners involved.
And Davis County commissioners, I've heard from more than one, the same sentiment. So they want to work with our city. They want to do what's best for our city, and they're willing to listen to what that. So.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. Let's go on to reports then. Does anyone have any new business?
Yeah, I'd like to request that the council would consider maybe a discussion or a task force be put together to consider renewing the discussions of a new city council building. These discussions were happening around 2014, 2015, and then they've lost traction. I'm not saying we evaluate, we do it. It's more of a what would it take, what would it be cost, and is it a want or a need? With all the sound systems that we've been talking about, the lighting issues that we've discovered here, the HVAC not working or working, space, you name it, it might be timely that we look into, is it cost prohibitive or is it an opportunity? Is the council willing to entertain that now, or is there too many things going on? We need to table it for a little while longer. Just a question.
We actually discussed this just a little bit today in our PR committee meeting regarding upgrades to this building. We're definitely lacking. So it's interesting that you brought that point up tonight.
I'm psychic.
Yeah.
We had the discussion in our committee meeting as well. So I think it's important we start the process. We've all seen how long the process takes. How long ago did we start talking about a public works building? So I think we need to start the process and put something together.
I advocate for a cute little 2-story red brick, like just throw it out there.
You need to talk to Wayne because he's in charge of cute things.
Oh, yeah.
Ouch.
You could get on that, Wayne. I'd appreciate it. I actually really can't see you very well, Wayne. Like, it's really hard.
That's a good thing.
Any thoughts on how to proceed? Do we want to form a committee that works on that, or just direct staff? How do you think that should take place?
Maybe the admin committee could do that.
Finance and admin?
What's the chair think?
Well, come out of the budget and everything. Yeah, let's take it.
we'll take it on.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other new business?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just have one thing, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I reached out to Mark Larson about the little corner area of landscaping that isn't really landscaping up on the frontage road where it curves and turns into 8200, I think. That was supposed to be maintained by that, I believe, by the HOA up there. And it has not been. Now, there are little gardens growing there, some of the citizens, and I wouldn't want to mess that up, but I think we need to hold them to the fire and make sure that they make that a nice place. It's not a nice place right now. That is part of their open space, and I believe city code would require them to landscape and keep that up. The name of it? What is that?
Red Hawk Homes.
Is it, what's it called? Red Hawk?
The Bird Hawk.
Red Hawk Homes, I guess, maybe. Thank you. All right, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Alberts.
I was just gonna see, just addressing two public comments. One's Corinne's comment about the fire department, was wondering if a public safety committee would be willing to look into the things she brought up.
It's on our list for sure.
Awesome. And then Michael Poff, I've got this answer for you once, so I'm thinking that maybe it wasn't right. But the tax going to Riverdale, it's supposed to be the last 4 digits of our zip code. We'll bring it back to Davis County, but it appears it's still going to Weber. So what would we need to do in that case?
We'll follow up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's all.
All right, anyone else?
I have a couple things also from the public comment. Just one is a clarification, maybe somebody out there can tell me. Has Maverick been consulted about the entrance with the,
There's an agreement in place between Maverick and Dan Murray, and I can't remember the other guy's name.
all of these concerns are being brought up? Maverick doesn't see it that way.
They have a letter.
They have a,
They had to sign an easement.
yeah, they had to sign an easement, an actual physical easement.
Okay.
Yeah, when Maverick went, my understanding is that when Maverick went in, they granted that access.
Okay. The second one was just to follow up on the Cedar Cove Park, or, make sure that you are putting that on the staff list and working through that. The sprinkler system there,
On the HOA?
the HOA, yeah.
And you're in the process, right, Dave? You have been working on that already.
Sorry, I was writing down a note.
Oh, on the Cedar Cove Park.
The HOA sprinkler system.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's something that Mark and I had already been working with them on a little bit. I had heard Mark's point of view. I hadn't talked directly to the HOA president yet, and so it sounds like I need to get a little bit more involved there to get
And
where
I
we
think
need to
we
go.
can
but-
still maintain it even if it's not on our computer system. It's not very tough. So I think everybody agrees. So,
Well, I know the generalities. I don't know the specifics. My understanding is that access is actually a little bit more difficult than was described, but I will definitely find out more. I think that there's two sides of the story here, and I'm happy to step in and see what can be done.
or our Parks and Rec chair could take care of that.
Shoot, I'll do it.
Nice.
I have nothing else going
I
on.
love that idea personally, but I'll now work with Angie on that. Thanks, Blair.
I do know one thing that Mark Larson did mention when I was talking to him a little bit about it is we just need to make sure that it's up to city code before we take it over. And that was part of his hesitation, because he didn't want to say, yeah, we'll take it without knowing where he stands.
Yeah, we've had a similar conversation when other private HOAs, whether it's private streets or other private services, they come to us eventually and say, hey, city, take this over. We want you to have it. In this case, it's actually city property. I don't know why it wasn't straightened out, decades ago, but that's a very important point that I know Mark was concerned at, and I am too, is that yes, it's on our property, but there was some type of agreement in place. And so there's a little bit of research to do on what that is. But ultimately, yes, we agree as a city that needs to be transitioned over, but we don't want to just say, hey, give us a broken system that we then now have a maintenance cost to upgrade and make it usable. So he indicated that there was trouble with it, and that is part of this transition discussion.
All right, anything else? All right, then we'll move to reports. I just wanted to give you a few facts from my Wasatch Front Regional Council Committee meeting, because I thought they were kind of interesting. In the past 3 months, fuel tax is down 13%. E-commerce is up 40%. Telecommuting is up 40%. Transit use is down 70%. Bicycle and open space use up 100%. Freeway volumes are down 40%. Travel time by auto is down 15%, and air emissions are down 38%. I thought those were interesting statistics. Also, they mentioned that the rapid growth predicted for the Wasatch Front will likely not decrease due to COVID, but could possibly be accelerated due to the economy of Utah and how we're handling this. So just for your information. All right, Councilman Halverson.
Planning Commission met, what date we meet, the 3rd, Wednesday the 3rd.
Which time?
Delayed day. I think most of you have heard most of this, so I'll be pretty quick. There was a final subdivision plat, the improvement plans, and a conditional use permit approved or recommended approval for Mortgage Car Wash. You'll be seeing them in your packet. Please pay attention to the conditional use permit, hours of operation, and so forth, and the restrictions they have on. And there were a few things that needed to be changed in their motion, so hopefully those get modified. There was definitely a lot of public comment. We heard some tonight, so and hopefully a lot of those issues get addressed. I think that's it.
Thank you, Councilman Halverson. All right, Councilman Halverson.
Okay, so the PR committee met today. We discussed the audio for City Hall and upgrades needed to do there. Do I need to go further than that, or is that all? I'm still learning.
We're still working through the details.
We're still working through that. Okay.
On what these upgrades may be.
Okay, we're still working through the upgrades.
Well,
thanks, Dave.
Well, let's do a little bit more than that.
A little more? Okay.
We have 3 quotes. 2 of them are solid. 1 of them is still being worked. It was kind of a ballpark quote. The long and short of it is 1 is way low, and then 2 are more professional organizations and they're higher. And at the same time, there's opportunity. I think that we've recognized and learned. Initially, the PR committee started looking at this as a one-way type of process, right? Live streaming is, we have 1 camera here that just simply sends it out, broadcasts it one way. We've recognized with the idea of live public comment through Zoom or other opportunities, and thinking through the past where we've had council members that have needed to call in remotely, that a 2-way communication may be a little bit more valuable as we move forward. Not to say that we will always operate the same way we do now, but because of that, the committee is looking at additional types of options as it relates to the functionality of this space in those veins. So that may be a little bit more convoluted than I intended to say it, but
in shorter words, it's a little upgrade or a big upgrade, but it can be really beneficial to not just COVID times, but other times as well, especially depending on how long it takes till we get a new city hall. So
we did not include in the upgrade conversation better plexiglass.
That's because we don't want them.
Right.
We could like tint it and then we can't see each other at all. I don't know. That came out completely wrong. Yeah, you definitely need to make it Haley proof. I'm very clumsy.
Yeah, may I, on that vein,
yeah.
on that idea?
That I'm clumsy? Yeah.
No. On the idea of this live stream and how we're working around this, it would be very valuable as we try new functionality to hear how that works. We do hear public comment and public feedback on how things are going, whether or not it's the email public comment or whether or not it's the Zoom live stream, even though we've only done that a few times. It would be great to hear how tonight's broadcast goes, because all of this is kind of new territory and a lot of it is workaround systems. It's not ideal because of our setup. So it'd be great if we heard how it went for people that were participating just on YouTube or other ways. So we do appreciate that feedback because it helps us improve.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have our first town hall meeting coming up on July 7th. And I will let Wayne, if you want to report on how that's going to go, you can. If not, I'll just do it next week when it's your turn.
Oh, it's going to go perfect.
I mean, not how it's going to go, but how you have it. What are we doing on it? I'll let you report on that since it was your idea. I just want to tell you thank you. I appreciate the camaraderie and the help with the public, or the, what's your committee? Municipalities Committee.
Municipal Utilities Committee.
That one. And then I know there's been a lot of intrepidation about Country Fair Days. I do have a report on that. I got to just pull up some real quick. So they're kind of at a stalemate with some of the things depending on what happens with COVID. But they have decided to go forward with a lesser modified form. So on the first Saturday, they're going to be doing a golf and pickleball tournament at Canyon Meadows. On Monday, they'll be doing a movie in the park, and depending on what the restrictions are in place at that time, they'll make adjustments for it. Tuesday, there will be a car show. Wednesday, there is an old timers baseball game. Thursday, there will be a volleyball tournament that you can sign up for. Friday, they're doing a chalk art contest, and you're able to sign up for a square, and either as a family or whatever, and have your square get judged. And then Saturday, they are planning on doing a parade. However, there'll be no booths, but there will be an art gallery at that other building we have. Family Activity Center. And I believe the plan for the art gallery is for it to be citizens of South Weber to display, and it will be going on all week. And then fireworks are still to be decided. They actually don't need a large gathering permit for fireworks because it's under the 2 hours. So they feel like they can probably figure something out to make that work. It's just a matter of cost. Sorry, I lost my mind. Yes.
Not to infringe on your report, but the type of art allowed, would it non-artist be? No.
Did you want to submit something?
An athlete doesn't need to be a certain medium or a certain age group.
You mean for the art show?
Yes.
No, I don't think that there is a certain medium. I know that there's like, I think one guy's doing like woodworking projects that he's done. So I think it's very broad, fine arts, or maybe not even fine. Well, that wasn't nice. Arts and crafts. I am stumbling. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. More information to come. They are working on getting that into the newsletter, so they're wrapping it all up there. So,
did you say there'd be a parade?
There will be a parade, yes, and they're going to figure out how to do that as well. The movie in the park, they're doing like those 6-foot circles. I'm sure some people have seen that. So we're hoping at that point in time we can have more than 6:50 gather. So yeah, they're moving right along, and I really appreciate them doing that, especially this year. It will be so good for our community, especially when everything else has been canceled for so many. So I think that's it.
Seeing as they're having a parade, Blair?
You bet.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we had a hay wagon. All right, thank you, Councilman Alberts.
No.
Hey, Councilman Soderquist.
We all agreed not to say that word.
What word? Oh, so, no,
It's not-
no, we don't say that.
Andy, do you remember your substitute word for it?
It was practicing paranoia proximity.
PPP.
Take it for what it's worth, right?
Okay, Councilman Soderquist.
Just a couple updates. The Admin Finance Committee met twice. We talked about it. The salary ranges that were identified, shifted earlier. And then just an update, we did meet with the gravel pit representatives this past week and got an update on things that are going there. They do many things to try to mitigate dust and other things that are taking place. And they indicated that so far this year, they have delayed the start of work 1 day due to high winds. And what they do is they wait till about 9 or 10 to begin work, unless the winds are exceeding a certain level and blowing so much dust, and then they held off. So that's one thing they have already done so far this year. That's it.
Quinn, can I ask a question? I know that this is Sacred Person's gravel pit, but I know that there's also a lot of complaints about Geneva. Do we have any way to make some sort of agreement with them or work with them?
Geneva's in on those meetings as well.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they indicated that they do the mitigation, but they had a mix-up a couple days where there was some shift in assignments and they did not get some stuff down on one of the days.
Oh,
We had some
okay.
ideas coming out.
That's a big improvement for Geneva.
I didn't realize they were in on that, so thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah, both gravel pits have representatives.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Councilman Soderquist, Councilwoman Petty.
The train club had an impromptu meeting. Well, let me rephrase that. The Parks and Recreation Committee had an impromptu meeting with the train club. And we are excited that they will do their June train ride with some type of precautions in place.
Which they have stated and.
Which they have stated, yes. Okay. Also, the wetlands restoration project has begun. That's kind of Brennan's report, but it's part of the parks too, so I'm just going with it. So their deadline is July 1st to have that restitution made.
It has to be completed by July 1st?
Yes, it's going to be a quick process. They dig it down, get some native soil, reseed it, walk away.
What kind of fencing are they going to be putting up for it?
None.
Oh, I thought we had to.
So you mean like for the
Temporary.
construction?
I thought we had to like.
Around the vegetation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is temporary fencing to protect the seeds as they germinate.
It's that,
Just that, yeah, just the.
that orange construction type thing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's in
It will come down eventually.
progress.
Where does the builder go?
The gravel pit.
So it's actually going to go, we're reutilizing it in the west side of the park.
For the parking lot area?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with the parking lot and pickleball and future work over there. Yeah, so we're trying to reuse that.
Well, that's great restitution. Good job.
I thought we had requested masonry fencing around the vegetation. Masonry walls? No.
So if you live near the Canyon Meadows area, just know there will be construction right there. And they're doing their best to make sure they're aware, and they were told very specifically to go very slow in the neighborhood. That's all I have to report.
Can I add one thing about wetlands restoration? I think that there's a question that has been out in the community regarding that project. And so specifically, I want to say that any known entities that have participated in putting fill there are being contacted. And we're not just dropping that and saying, as a city, we will do it all. We are approaching anybody that we know has been involved in that. So just to clarify that.
When you approach them, what's the end game?
The end game is to have them participate in the restoration, since they were participants in the fill.
Okay.
So could that possibly save us money?
That's the hope. Yes. Ultimately, we're trying to save money and reduce the burden on city funds.
Thank you.
Thanks for that update, Dave.
Thank you, Councilman Petty. Councilman Windsor.
Okay, I get to report on the perfect town hall meeting that's coming up on July the 7th.
Greg,
You
it's gonna be
just
cute.
jinxed
Yeah.
We have chosen to do a panel discussion. The topic that's been out there, the Municipal Utilities Committee has been trying to tackle has been high or internet usage or internet capacity. Fiber is another way of talking about it. There are other technologies. And so the approach is we've asked a few members of the community who have some knowledge on the subject to sit at a panel with Blair and I, not to debate. This will not be a debate. This is not something we are going to do. This is more of what's the options for the city, and with each option, how can we address that? What does that mean? And just more of an informative discussion, and then see what the public has, what questions the public might have for us to further consider. We do have this as an active agenda item on the Municipal Utilities Committee to consider. It's not a pressing issue, but it's something that we want to at least give some consideration to moving forward. So that will be our perfect dialogue on July the 7th. We still are waiting for a location. I don't know if this is the optimal location, but we are arm wrestling as to where to have that. Blair's house or the rec center. I vote for the rec center, but Blair thinks the convenience of his front room are conducive to that. Yeah.
We did discuss that today in our PR meeting as well.
I'll do share, please.
We thought it would be best here. So I kind of feel scared to say that now that you feel that this is not that.
Well, this isn't the perfect place, I guess. So.
We need a new one.
No, I'm just teasing. We'll figure out the location moving forward. So
the plan is to utilize our live streaming and things, and hope to have people join in virtually.
Sounds great. We're the active guinea pigs, so we hope to be the successful guinea pigs, because I think this has some benefit for the community to have these town halls. Speaking of the Municipal Utilities Committee, we've met and we are continuing to develop the street lighting replacement program. Looking at the numbers, they are somewhat hard to digest. So rather than start purporting what the numbers are, we're still looking at options. We'd like to have this done in a 10-year program, not a 37-year program, but everything costs money. You have to invest money in order to save money. That's kind of a hard sell, but we are looking at the options. There is no money set aside for the fiscal year 21 budget, but we are looking to start putting a plan in place for the fiscal year 22 budget and dedicate reserves, or not reserves, but revenues for that replacement program, and prioritizing which ones need to be replaced first and what the importance factor are. We also are going to have a report on the Public Works building. We'll be discussing that in closed session coming up. And what's the other item we're talking about, Blair? Help me with the. We talked about the Cottonwood Drive project and the different projects from the west side reservoir to the Cottonwood Drive pipeline. Where are the status of those projects? There's one other project I'm missing.
East Bench transmission line and
East Bench Drive transmission line. So we've been actively looking at the different aspects and working with staff in that regard. And then mosquito abatement. We have a meeting this Thursday, and I'm still reporting that the incredible Tarsalis, nasty creature, he is active. And he's out there spreading his little West Nile virus. There are no active cases in Utah, but that is the nasty critter that spreads that virus. So he is out and about, and we are doing our best to quarantine that bugger. So.
Give him a mask and a
no pun intended.
Nope, all puns intended, yes. That's all I have to report.
Glad we gave you that committee. Thanks, Lee. All right, Dave.
Yeah, two things. The general plan, second draft public review and comment period is fast approaching. We're excited about that and we'll go active next week. We also have scheduled for June 24th and 25th, a Wednesday and Thursday, a general plan open house. Because of that, I would like to propose to the council that we do not hold city council meeting on the 23rd and go 3 days in a row. But because there's a fifth Tuesday in June, that we push back the 23rd and hold the meeting on the 30th.
Agreed.
Agreed.
But I love you guys so much. Why can't we meet 3 days in a row?
We did that last time. It was a long week.
Oh, okay, I see how you are. I'm fine. It's getting late, if you can tell.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Hey, Brandon, did you have anything else? Mark? Nothing? Lisa?
I don't have anything, but just to be aware that the town hall meeting will need to be agenda and notice.
Yeah, to that point, we will not be noticing it as a meeting of the city council where any business is conducted, right? Similar to this meeting, it will simply be noticed as a town hall meeting where at least 3 of the city council members will be present. So it will be an open meeting. We'll broadcast it. So we'll notice it, but it is not considered a meeting of the city council where business will be conducted.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Michelle, anything? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to enter a closed session per UCA section 52-4-2051D to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Aye, me, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll have a 5-minute recess.